a pair of scissors.
I just saw you sheathing something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a bunch of like random like sewing stuff around my desk right now, so trying to clean up at the same time, and also using a hammer because I'm like trying to hammer this nail into this giant thing of webbing that I have because I made a backpack and it came with like I got a bunch of webbing for the
Yeah.
backpack.
Now you
Because
have
they don't
extra
sell it in
webbing
small
for.
quantities, so now I
Yeah.
have like 100 feet of webbing or something.
Well, just put it up on Craigslist. Sell it by the foot.
So by the foot.
Yes.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I'm pretty tired. My body is tired. I woke up at 5 to go surf, and the surf ended up being like 5 and 6 foot waves. Like we're pretty consistent.
Oh wow.
So it was big, and the paddling was like rough. And I was out there for 2 hours with my buddy. So it was. I'm dead.
Nice.
I'm dead.
A lot of exercise. It's a lot of movement.
Yeah.
Well, we walked like for 30 minutes near a drainage ditch in Idaho. So that's what we've been doing exercise wise. So I get it. Yeah. I mean, it's like a creek.
Why the drainage ditch? It's just a nice, comfortable,
Farming.
secluded place to walk. It's farming. Oh.
So there's
Yeah.
like
okay.
a dirt road that sort of, I don't know. Yeah, I don't, if you saw Dave's Instagram, I think you posted it. There's a subdivision, and then there's a road that stops, and there's a big sign that says this road will be extended in the future. It's like a
I
very
like
good
that,
sign.
yeah.
Yeah. And that goes out into the farm field. So I don't know if they're like turning over farm into like living. I'm not sure.
Cool.
But yeah.
But yeah, they have irrigation channels all around the fields, and then there's like tractor paths, and we can walk on those. And they, it's a sunset, and then it's all hazy. The sun is like blood red, and there are ducks in the drainage ditch. It's a vibe of some sort.
Sounds like a vibe. For
Yeah. I mean, the place we're staying is like, there's all of the like sort of solar punk stuff online that's like, some city with like greenery and like a blimp and like, like a robot with a bunch of lithium batteries or whatever. We're like in the sort of rural equivalent of that. Like the family has like bought a 7-bedroom house. It's like a tract home though. Like, so it's like a suburban neighborhood. And but the plots of land are like decently sized, and it's mostly farming folk out here. Like every single driveway has like 2 giant trucks in it. There's like RVs in every driveway. Like some people build like custom garages to put whatever other toys they have. And then here they have the whole house. He has the whole house rigged up. Anything you can automate, he's automated. Like
Smart
all the door
home.
locks. Yeah, like the internet is like really stable. He's got it all wired. Like it's like every appliance, and there's sensors everywhere. And then he's got all these things. Yeah, got the Orbi. And then in the backyard, like they have like crops, and like they're farming back there, a Pepsi machine, and then like ducks and chickens and stuff. So they've got fresh eggs every morning. So like it's a little, they're in that thing.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so it's a weird, improbable place, and then people are just sort of coming and going, and then they're working the place the whole time because there's like a lot of work to do. So yeah, it's something. I don't know. It's a good place to get work done. It's really quiet, and it reminds me of like living in Las Vegas in the suburbs.
Drawing aliens on the wall.
Drawing aliens on the wall. I thought aliens were cool at the time. They were.
Well, how did we traded John for Beamer?
Oh yeah.
I noticed that
You can only have 5 people at any given time.
That would be a great feature on Zoom.
Yeah. 5 only. Then you could battle to get in. Hi, Beamer.
He might be muted because he's on another call. He's dual calling.
Oh, wow. That's
Perfect. Anyhow, it's been interesting here. Like a definite, like a super, like a switch from the hostel in Park City. Because in Park City, everyone there is an extrovert. They're all just like, "What's up? How's it going? What's happening? Where are you at? Where are we gonna go? What's next?" And then here, everybody's quiet and they sort of mind their own business. You ask somebody what's up, and they're like, "Mm-hmm," and then they move on.
It's really, it's hard for me.
Yeah.
Like at the hostel, I was like, okay, maybe I'm more of an introvert, and here I'm like, maybe I'm more of an extrovert. But the extrovert part of me is like, I need people like so I can reflect off of them, like what's going on, like do I exist? How, like, am I okay? Am I alive? Like I don't know.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyhow, plus Kristen's sick. She's got Ebola or something.
Oh, yeah, probably Ebola.
Just light Ebola.
Well, like,
Yeah. Anywho, so that's what's going on in our travels. It's also 100 degrees here.
Ooh.
The chickens are not happy. They're laying less eggs.
So many anyways. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the conversations they had, the host or whatever had like friends over, like co-farming friends or whatever, and the chatter is like, it's like at such a different cadence than like the stuff that we're doing. And like Kristen and I are talking about our thing, and then they're like talking about chicken personalities and how like California chickens, like if you put like a spaghetti noodle in the pen there, they'll like go after it because they think it's a worm. But Idaho chickens, they don't do that. They get freaked out. They don't know what it is. And so now I know that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Really.
And then the chickens like to cuddle, but the ducks they're dickheads. So there's that too. Yeah. Learning all kinds of things about farm life. Yeah. Anywho. All right.
What's going on in everyone else's world besides John's dentist adventure? I mean, that's a highlight. I mean, or a low light. I don't know. Like it's a big to do though.
It was not great, yeah. Because I basically like 4 months ago I was here. I got my checkup. They're like, you need to do 10 cavities, and I was like, this is gonna be awful. And so I left, and I came back, and I knew that I was gonna have to do it, and so I went and did it. It was like less miserable than I thought, and drilling technology has improved since I last got my teeth drilled. Clearly, because it was pretty quick. The rest of the time was like actually filling in all the pieces of teeth that they took away. Yeah, but it's just like not fun, and you're just like laying there, and I'm like, I really just tried to distract myself with like thinking about the fact that this is possible at all. Like I come into a business and just like lay down and get drugs injected into me, and then like things drilled into my teeth, and like pay them in money, and then like they buy food with that after. It's very strange. How did we end up here?
It's a good rundown. Civilization.
Tokenomics. Yep. It is weird. All right. Well, do we want to hop into what are we doing? Actually.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier. I just assumed Dave was driving at least part of this because he did some UI work like for hours yesterday. And then, he was saying in the Discord that he wanted to do a loom and he forgot. And then he's like, and then I had a little write up about what I did, and I was going to send it in the building channel, and then I didn't send it, and I was like, wow.
It's okay.
What happens when your brain is going?
No,
age.
That might be a nice place to start, where we kind of get a recap of what's happened. And then I was also thinking, Kristen, maybe you have an idea about this. Maybe we like join the Figma file and try like plopping down all the things that we want to do in the short term, and try to just like spatially organize like little features and tasks, and see if any sort of groupings emerge that maybe like we can make piles of like sync things and async things, and just try and see if there are dependencies that then we put things behind each other. And then that should be very easy to like mock things up as well, because we're already in the Figma file.
Sure.
Yeah, I think too, the last time we did this and Dave thought we were all like feral beasts because there was no like structure. So maybe this time, Dave, you can help sort of lead it, corral it.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if you want me leading organizational things, but we can
We'll do
try.
the organizing, but you'll do the prompting for like feature stuff. Like I think that makes sense.
You can give it a go. Worst case scenarios, it goes down in flames. So that's fine too.
Entertainment.
All right.
And maybe we could like take a peek at proposals while we're at it and just see if like I saw Shrews, you like sent out a little suggestion and just try to get
That's
those
a good
into
idea.
somewhat of a list so that
Fantastic idea.
they're easy to like pull off and bite off.
Cool. All right. Well, let's jump in because I mean we'll probably end up dropping into Figma anyway.
Yep.
All right. Go away. Why? Okay. How do we do this?
We're also really impressed with Beamer's commitment to Cybersport 91.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Yeah, every time you refresh, kicks you out.
I think this might be more of a Chrome thing because I think this didn't happen for me on Firefox, but it happens for me on Chrome as well.
Yeah, I haven't tested anything in anything but Chrome. I'm just sort of.
Should happen on Firefox.
You mean the Connect Wallet stuff?
Yeah.
There's I think it's because there's code that we could write that would trigger it to try and reconnect on load that we haven't written yet.
Oh, okay. Cool. All right. Okay, so where was I? All right. So I implemented.
I can share that. I wrote a header file that mocks Uniswaps that manages all the wallet connection and like renders all that stuff out within auto connects. If you want that, sure.
Cool.
Nice. It could be useful here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So most of the stuff is just dummied in. Whatever reason this wasn't. I don't know. I guess that's just gonna. I don't know what's working here. Nothing seems to be.
Yeah, I was also trying to figure out why type text isn't working. I feel like it might be working, but then it's limited to 10 blocks maybe, and we might not be handling like rewriting. So
is the like stuff that CJ you pushed to the you did something with the plain text or something like that. Is that tied in here or no?
What do you mean?
You said, or maybe I misread that. There was something.
Yeah, there was the contract verification that got
have text search on context and.
Yeah, that shouldn't really affect.
No, it shouldn't affect. But I guess the question is, are we able to use it without modifying the query parsing?
Should be. It should have just been adding like search capability to this, as far as I know, Shrews, because it was just like it didn't modify any existing like schema definitions. It was just adding a new definition, so it shouldn't affect any querying stuff.
Yeah, as far as I know, the only queries we have are the ones that John wrote live last time, which, as far as I remember, didn't include the standard search kind of stuff.
No, the author type and one more. Something.
I was having trouble getting them. It doesn't really matter. I just put a bunch of blocks in here, but I wanted to fiddle with it. I couldn't really get it working. And then there was something with packages too that I had a hiccup with. Where is it?
Locally.
Yeah, these things, I don't remember what it actually was. We'll have to, I think it was GraphQL or something needed to be installed. That's the only way I could get it working. I didn't obviously commit these things, but so there was something there. Yeah, I don't know. We can go through that and see what's up and run it locally, but that's where I started. And then, yeah, let me just walk through this stuff and then we can start picking apart any of that. So yeah, this is stylistically the first step, I guess. And then these things I've dummied in, they need to be tied in, the like order stuff. I moved history up into this little doodad for right now. Put this stuff in here So I couldn't really figure out. We talked about not wanting it at the top level, but I think these should be probably history events, but I don't know how to get them in here because that's above my pay grade. Just the way the components are structured. So like dummying these things in, like I don't know if we want events that like it's mated to IPFS and then that's green and you know the TX is received and then the confirmation shows up in the history list. We could also probably show them in relation to this button or something. That's where I'm at with that. I sort of rejiggered. Oh, we have a thing with the author and creator nomenclature right now. I think it's a block.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I just tossed this in here so that I could see it mocked up. But author works, but it yells. That's something. I mean, I don't know.
How does it yell exactly? Like, does it say that the field doesn't exist?
Just do that.
TypeScript.
Works.
Yelling.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
I think it got it might have got renamed. It's just some.
The reason for that is basically the TypeScript stuff that we wrote manually isn't in sync necessarily with what's coming over from the graph. So it might actually be there, but TypeScript, the type definition just needs to be updated probably.
But it works. Just can't commit it. So there's a bunch of these little kinds of things that I'm bumping into. I don't know the best way to like communicate this stuff. Yeah, we can figure that out. I don't know like how to, because I'm going really quickly through this stuff and like just running into it, and it's not like a blocker necessarily. But yeah, it'll pop up. So yeah. Anyways, then this I started to mock up one of the. I think we can move to like sort of smarter fields or like text areas here. There's at least one package that does like better resizing, like when you're typing and stuff like this, it makes the thing bigger. I don't know. Not really too worried about all those affordances yet until we start like getting stuff in here. Yeah, so what I was thinking is we can move these things, text and image, into here. And then
I like that. That looks very good.
Yeah. That'll collapse.
Doesn't force you to make a decision right away either.
Yeah. And then when we swap over to image, I haven't mocked this up yet, but that could just move to like a drop area or something like that. We need to find all that stuff anyway, but yeah.
Would it lose the data between switching? Like if you were to tab between the types?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I would think it would be nice for it not to, just to kind of have that like local data storing feel to it.
Yeah.
So
need to get stored.
I wonder if the trade-off there though is it might be confusing where you think you're posting all of it at once.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a tricky one.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right on that. Yeah, I'll rethink that. That's me being too clever for my own good. Okay. Yeah, we still
maybe
probably
also like
need
the choice of if it's maybe framed more as a post as colon and then like a toggle, where then you usually using some text, like make it more specific that there's only one version that's leaving. You're just sort of like choosing the flavor of your block.
Right.
Yeah, I can play. Yeah. Anyways, this one's not super important. We've got this function. We need to get images in there anyway. So I think that's probably a first priority before we like collapse any of the UI. Yeah, when you cancel out of these things, they hang around. There's that going on. The date time stuff doesn't seem to be working anymore. I didn't really poke at it too much. So we probably need to figure out what's going on there.
That the reason for that is that the components aren't refreshing, Or sorry, do you mean that no times are coming in, or that they're not updating?
They're all just
Got it.
set to now. I think when what was it? Yeah, like this thing doesn't appear to be doing anything.
Yeah, I wonder.
It
could
might be in
type
the wrong
mismatch.
format for them.
Yeah. So
That's my guess. It's just not the format they want or something.
probably like because I tossed this thing together based on so we got not super important, just little stuff like this popping up.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's great to call it out because that way, like at the very least, we can get it into a list of things and spot patterns and triage.
Yeah, and I think that's basically it. Yeah. Then just lots of little style stuff here and there. So is there anything else that I did? I really need to start writing these things up. No, I think that's it. Yeah, just sort of trying to put things in trays and give us room to sort of stick stuff. Oh yeah, I was gonna implement the sort of pending thing. I'll do a mock-up of that. I've got an idea on that whole thing, but that's not really useful right now. So yeah, that's what I got so far.
Awesome.
It's a small step.
Looking really good.
So yeah. I guess any questions on any of that?
Pretty
What would be
self-explanatory.
like the best flow for like those little things that you're running into? Like, would you want to like, should that be something where you post in Discord and kind of get a solution worked out that way? Should it be like an issue? Should it be part of the pull request?
Yeah.
Because a lot of those things are really quick fixes.
Yeah. In the past, I've done a lot of pairing on stuff like that. Like we just sort of hit it and like, but obviously that's not always going to work. I think I can toss them in Discord. That seems like and if anything is like more complex than Discord, right? It's a multi-step thing or it's going to take some digging into. We could move it into an issue maybe. That's my instinct on it, but you guys
I do
know
agree
better.
with what should be kept or what can be kept in Discord maybe should until it's like complex enough to warrant its own issue. Also because we're kind of keeping to this burst flow for now. Like I like this idea that there's a friction, so you go do something else, and then that friction gets solved, and then you merge into the same branch, so that the next time you come back, like there's it doesn't have to cascade and collapse. Like it's just already just there. And if everything was a separate pull request, it could get tricky to like try and merge things in if they're out of order. But given we're sort of keeping to one branch, like there's just like this active sort of product that we're all like interacting with.
Yeah, I like that. Like, yeah, I think I like we've got a sort of live branch, and then these little things are, if they're simple, we just knock them out. We don't need to create a big, logistical hurdle on any of it. That works well with the way I jump around so much. I'll run into this thing, I'll try to fix it. If I don't know how, like I'll move on to the next thing. So I just need to like get in the habit of dumping that stuff off into Discord. So yeah, let's try that the next time around and then see how it feels. And if that's working, then we can sort of play with that. And then I've got this like tendency to not want to bother anybody with this stuff. I don't know what that is. So I got to get over that a little. But
yeah. So maybe in the same way that we have proposals right now, which is kind of like things that don't exist that should. We could also maybe create a new channel that's like frictions or paper cuts. So like things that it's not like you're like saying person A needs to fix like this and such by a day. It's more like here's a thing I encountered while trying to build other things that didn't let me, and like I either need to communicate with others to figure it out, or it's just like out of my sort of like domain, and but like I have context on how to solve it, and so we can either do a pairing session or whatever from there on.
Yeah, I think building can work for that for now, right? Because we're not
I,
posting too much stuff in there, and then we can see what the style is, and then maybe break it out from there. Yeah, because already I'll forget where to put anything, and then just not do it because I don't
yeah,
remember, and then because I get in code brain because
yeah.
it's less natural for me to like build than it is to like design or draw or whatever. So, if anything like causes friction, I'm like, fuck it, we'll come back to it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that would be most helpful for me in the short run, and then we can start to formalize it a little bit more after that, I guess.
Yeah.
If
So I
if
guess
that works.
just treat building as your sort of working diary. Like,
Yeah.
about to do this. I didn't get to do that, but I did this thing.
Yep.
Just
Mm.
poof, everybody else is up to date on the latest status.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that's good.
And I am kind of curious as well, like when there is more blocking issue, how we want to handle that in like timely fashions, or if that just does become an issue and says like, yeah, we're all aware like this is kind of a bigger blocker versus like a small like asynchronous kind of like friction that can be handled and merged in. But I think that's too far out, so we'll hit it when we hit it.
I mean, those big blockers seem like good candidates for like, oh, we should do a synchronous session soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any
Yeah, I
gaps
like
that I
that.
can help fill out? Hi, everybody. By the way, I muted my other
Hi.
call, so now they're the side call. Nice to meet everybody. If there's any gaps that I can help fill up, let me know. Like, I'm a React developer. Sharuz has been bringing me up to speed on Solidity, yeah, I'm just down to hack.
Sweet.
Awesome. Do you have any like particular things that you like really enjoy doing, like more like data stuff versus front end interaction stuff versus?
I don't like responsibility. So like the like I don't take on the big data projects, like I don't want to manage the Postgres ever. Like leave me off that team. So I sit on the product side a lot, but I'm a developer. I'm kind of like a product / developer guy. So I sit in between like design a little bit, product a little bit, and development a little bit. So my normal stack is like, Next.js or Gatsby and React. And I like Tailwind a lot, just from the design side of my mind of being able to like code and design at the same time. I like the movement of that. So that's what I say. Like I'm like, I would say I'm good at that.
Cool. Well, right now
Perfect.
I'm like implementing all of the UI like like sloppy as hell. There's no system basically other than me painting into components. So there's going to need
to offload that. If you want
Sure.
to offload that, let me know. If like start running managing a storybook, and is there a storybook in here now?
Hell no. There is the minimum amount before the system breaks, is it? Because I have trouble managing the like engineering side of the design system stuff. I like painting in, so yeah, I don't know. I've never actually worked.
What's everybody's like kind of role or strong suits here? Like I know Sharuz pretty well. I talked to Dave and Kristen, but I never worked with them.
You guys go first.
Sure. I'm not really sure what my strong suit here is relative to the code. I'm pretty comfortable like catching up to code and figuring out what sort of the next things to do around it are and like coordinating, I guess. I also feel like a slight aversion to like, design a new schema and deploy like 20 virtual machines that all like, I'm just gonna be like, oh no. But if there's like a pretty defined PR, like an issue, I can absolutely like dive into that. And once there's clarity, and I'm generally happier with like getting a design that's pretty like polished and then implementing it rather than having to figure out what to implement and how at the same time. That tends to trip me up a lot.
I think for me, I don't know. I kind of like working everywhere, but design, like on the design front end stuff, is like probably where I work the least. Like I can get around React enough to like build in it most of the time, but I'll probably like botch something compared to like people that know what they're doing. versus like on the back end side. I worked as an embedded software developer for 2 years. So I don't know. I find Solidity and that kind of stuff like pretty interesting, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. But I kind of just like hacking on things, to be honest. And if I mess it up, I'm sorry, because I think I just like throw code around and like, it works.
Which has been great for me. I like that. I like that style of building. Just, you know, a little bit of mess, but generally forward momentum. Yeah. So I'm like, I guess product design stuff. Like I can paint some interfaces, but like I stopped really developing on that. I was managing or directing like probably for the last 10 years. So like I can cobble together like web interfaces pretty well. My mobile patterning stuff is not as good, but like I'm pretty good at designing flows and collapsing things.
You prefer to sit in Figma predominantly?
I prefer to sit back and watch people operate Figma these days, but I can do it. But like any sort of second order or like hyper complex Figma stuff, componentizing and this kind of thing, like I don't spend enough time in there anymore to do this kind of stuff. So, but I can mock things up like an interface pretty quickly, and you know, I can sort of sketch on all of that stuff, and then I like pairing on interfaces. Like if there's a structure in place, I can tinker with all of it to like get the flows and balances and stuff. Well, like, and then, yeah, I don't know. Also, part of what we're doing here is like sort of just running into frictions, and then like anybody who wants to play with the thing can play with the thing, and then we figure out how we're like, if it's interesting to you, like pick it up and goof with it. Yeah, we don't have a lot of like formalization on what we're doing so far. We're like making it up as we go, kind of, and this has been pretty nice. But yeah, anyways. And then Kristen, what do you do?
I don't do the like technical side of things as far as coding goes. I can follow loosely. And I'm more of like a wrangler, I guess, like keeping things on track, following like process. I think I'm good with social design of how these things can be used, but I tend towards like a really big macro level, like civilization stuff. I don't know why. My brain goes there. So I think this will be useful when we get into figuring out flows with how to kind of use smart contracting to set up some kind of constraints and like system within which at like a bigger scale our work can kind of like flow in some kind of cyclical way. Yeah, I do stuff that's sort of like in between. Like I like taking notes. I do this real time. I like admin stuff, keeping people on the same page, that sort of thing.
Glue. She's glue.
Chief Wrangler.
Chief Wrangler. Chief Wrangler jeans.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. Like we're gonna kind of go through some of this stuff right now, and like pick off some like low-hanging fruit and do all the, I don't know. We're figuring it out. You'll see.
Feel free to dump on me or anything, or just like be vocal, and like I'll try not to like step on people's toes, of course, but like I'm very comfortable in React. I love React. I mean, all I do all day is React, and I love React up until the point you get into like Redux, and that's when I think like React is overstepping its bounds. So that's when I kind of like, whoa, this is supposed to be a fun component library. Like, let's stay here and let's not overcomplicate. Like, I understand that Facebook needs stuff like that, but that's why I don't work at Facebook.
Have you
used
Stand?
Say it again.
ZooStand?
What's that? ZooStand?
Okay. So it's a state management
ZU.
library that we're using.
Oh, that's cool. No, I just use contacts just out of the box.
You'll like ZooStand. It's kind of the happy medium between.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Great. ZooStand, found it. I'll read up on it today.
Cool. All right.
That's
so
great to hear, because yeah, this is basically my first project like where I'm writing React. I've like slightly like maintained
Oh,
projects
got it.
before,
Great.
but
So
this,
who's
yeah,
doing
this
most
is,
of it? Sharuz, what are your React skills? I only know Sharuz in the
strong.
context of Solidity. He's like my
I
sensei.
can make stuff. I don't know. I'm usually just like learning stuff as I go. So I don't know what my
Okay,
strengths
got
or limitations are there.
How long have you been in React?
3 or 4 years probably.
Yeah, okay, got it.
It's been interesting. We've seen what we end up doing usually is one person, if we're working like together, like in a synchronous session like this, one person drives is what we're calling it. And when we get into programming, when John or CJ drives and we're working in React, it's been fascinating for me to watch because Sharuz understands it better than they do. So there's this weird like teaching, learning, making thing in real time. So I'm curious, like CJ and John, if it helps with your learning of the system this way, because it's just like it's all like integrated.
oh,
It's
it is like
yeah.
the absolute best way to learn. I've not seen or felt a better way to do it, where you have like somebody who's like sitting right behind your shoulder, keeping in mind all of the boundary conditions, like the bigger thing.
Yeah.
And then you're just like kind of like doing your like thing, but if you start going off the track, it's just like, oh no, so here's where you want to go instead. It's just like this instant feedback loop. It's amazing. It's been a blast.
Yeah.
I think so far John's written the majority of the web app and CJ did the contracts is kind of so far. But I think everybody's kind of playing around with everything.
Got it. How long have you been writing Solidity, CJ?
Since like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, got it.
A little longer.
Like live on the call when Sharuz demoed it, probably.
Okay, we'll have to sync offline and like see where we are in the map and try to warn each other because Sharuz just been like my backboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys do any, I'm really curious about the smart contract stuff. I don't know. Yeah, I'm curious because I'm not a developer and like how much I should be studying that, but I'm like really interested in the interface between what humans are leading, like people, and like what we can offload into the contract and that sort of like relationship between the two of them. Because I think that's where things get real interesting.
And that's like for me, for everybody, I would say it's like you got to put 2 weeks and like learn it and write a couple.
Cool.
And you're just like,
Okay.
now I can think in this model, right? Like before, it's like I thought I understood so much about this stuff, and then I like wrote my first one. Like I didn't know shit about this.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm kind of curious too. I did mention that programming language. I think they're calling it Phi, but I'm going to call it Iron because it makes more sense to say Iron than Phi. Which at least to me seems a lot more readable than Solidity, at least on the like surface level. It seems like they've abstracted certain things away from Solidity that maybe are like syntactically built in. So it might be a easier way to
Solidity.
I think there's an intermediary language, I think like called YUV or YUUV or something. I forget what it's called. YUV is a color space, so it's probably not that.
I mean, everything goes down to bytecode ultimately, which is what that like kind of gas to like gas fee per operation thing. Like everything is ultimately getting down to that. Sorry, yeah.
Because it seems like roughly they're at the same like plane of how you would write it. I think the syntax is maybe just more familiar to like Python or Rust or maybe even like.
Well, I'm like trying to wrap my head around because like with Ethereum moving from EVM to EWASM, Rust will run on the EVM. So I feel like we're about to like enter like a whole like a stage 2, you know, where it's like, oh, now we have 5 languages to pick from, and like no one, it's Solidity is just like the C of the group.
Interesting. And that transition is happening now, basically.
Right. I think we're in the process. Is that right, Sharuz? Like,
seems like
we're through like ring number 3 of like maybe 12. It's like everything's happening next month, and then it's like the thing that happens, and they're like, oh, all the stuff you're thinking of is like 2 years out.
I mean, all of this stuff is just going to make it seem so much more accessible because there's so many people so many developers that are super experienced with like Web 2 technologies and just know, what's available to them. And then they hear Solidity and it's just like, oh my God, that seems complicated, and blockchain and, all this stuff. but then like once you're in it, you realize like, oh, it's just another programming language. It's the same as everything else. You just kind of got to do syntax a little bit differently. And then there's some kind of gotchas somewhere that you have to be a little bit more careful about. But yeah, I think all of this is kind of just like, heading towards people being comfortable diving in and shipping stuff to the blockchain, especially with layer 2 building up to where it's not like, $100 to deploy something.
Yeah, that thing you posted yesterday, Sharu, is like, I don't understand it, but that bridge from Ethereum to Polygon is like super fascinating. Like whoever figures that out is going to be like the biggest person in the world.
I mean, it's there, it's open source.
Yeah, right. But
Done.
yeah, but making that so it's like you can just like
Actually
not
bridging
think
it.
about it.
My hope there for my use for the internet camera, and my hope there is that I could allow for people to sell film on Ethereum mainnet and have it automatically kind of affect the use on Polygon. Because I think that's the biggest friction that I have with Polygon right now is that I don't think people want to spend money there because they don't have it on the Polygon network. Whereas Ethereum is where people are storing their actual funds.
It's just such a limited pool. That's like, it's like, okay, we got you over to MetaMask. Now you got to manually add a network. Now you got to bridge your ETH. Now you got to like, it's like, come on, like.
Yeah.
I'm trying to avoid all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're kind of doing like what Zed's doing, right? With like, it's a flat rate, and then you take care of it on the. You run all your transactions on Polygon, but they don't need to know about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's like a really nice on ramp.
So are you effectively like? So what is the model there? Is it you're just handling that? Are you like a bank in that case? Like, what is the how do you think about that? Sure.
Which part?
The part where so you're handling like transactions for people, and then like.
Well, I guess yes and no.
Yeah.
I'm setting up the thing so that people can deploy the contracts so that they may handle those transactions themselves. But because all this is new and because the target user for people that would deploy film are not developers, I have to build out, the kind of tracks that make that really easy for them. Part of that is just, what is the best case scenario for them? They don't want to necessarily, or I don't want them to have to think about Polygon or networks and cross-chain stuff. Just assuming that Ethereum is the default, Ethereum is where people are going to want to transact. So I'm just trying to figure out what is the kind of most, hidden away behind the scenes bridge where transactions that need to be, about like financial transactions can happen on Ethereum. That state gets moved over to Polygon automatically behind the scenes so that people don't have to think about it. And the film just kind of works. Like so far, I've been able to avoid anybody having to switch their network in any aspect of the internet camera stuff. You can just log in and stay on Ethereum because it's just doing the signing transaction stuff.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
And that's a good bar, I think, to keep of like, if I ever have to ask somebody to switch networks, probably not a good UX decision overall.
Totally.
So I'm trying to easier almost to like launch your own wallet. That like
exactly. So I'm trying to maintain that standard through the question of how do people actually sell and distribute their film effectively, which is a longer term question, but yeah.
What's the gas fee on, like, if it's $5, like what's the gas fee on that on the mainnet?
I think ENS is probably the closest reference there, where it just depends on what
but it's cheap because you're not doing any logic. It's just a money transfer.
And minting so like ERC20s is a lot cheaper in terms of gas than minting an ERC 721.
Got it. Because of the content URI.
Because it doesn't need. The ERC 721 has to store a content URI for each one.
Right.
ERC 20 doesn't have to store, per token information. It just stores like balances, and that's it. So
just integers, no strings.
So
yeah,
like
I was
selling film as a filter creator or somebody, and you want to sell it, then paying that gas fee on Ethereum makes sense because you're ideally making that money back and then some. But
so would that sort of be saying that the person minting the film or like originally designing it is fronting some of that, and then the people buying it then, like, who's paying for it when, is what I'm trying to
I
feel.
guess so. There's two routes if you're a film creator. One of them is just to give away stuff for free if it's like, you know, your friends or something that you just want to make public. The other route is trying to sell it or trade it for some financial incentive. If that's the case, then going onto Ethereum will have some additional gas fees, like, you know, 10 to 20 bucks on average, let's say. I think if your intent is to sell it, you're going to already bake in some kind of, you know, profit margin that you're going to want on your work. So I think those are just fees that you assume are like the cost of doing business at that point. They don't get repaid through any mechanism. They'll just get repaid overall because the film creator is setting a price somehow and then making that money back.
Yeah, so just operating expenses.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the movement to, so the thing that you linked up was something that handles the like movement of stuff from Ethereum to Polygon effectively. Yep. Okay, so and then is there a cost to doing this at all? Like,
yeah, so on basically there's three different formats within that repo that I shared. There's transferring ERC20s from one chain to another. There's transferring ERC721 from one chain to another. And then there's a generic state sync where like any kind of message data that you want to pass from one network to another, which can hold any arbitrary information. I think that there's probably going to be some like using all of it. You know, if you want to mint your photos on Polygon and then move them onto Ethereum, because that's where your collection is, that's where you'll use the ERC721 option. If you're trying to sell your film, that's where you'll probably use the ERC20 option. I think the state sync thing is something where I'm going to look for transactions happening on the Film Factory on Ethereum mainnet, and when that happens, it'll trigger a message being sent to Polygon saying, "Hey, this user created this film. Generate, you know, an instance of it on Polygon so that it's ready to go for them." Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it's I mean, we're deep in the plumbing right now. Like, I'm just curious how it's kind of tying together. Like, I'm starting to get like how the ecosystem is sort of tying
playing
up.
with some stuff that's like with Zed explain, like I've seen Sharuz's setup and he explained it to me, but going through that flow on Zed and just understanding like everything's on Polygon, and I got all ready to like put my Polygon in. It's like, oh no, there's no Polygon involved. Like it's just that the stuff exists.
What's
the transactions are being the horse racing thing.
Oh, that's what that is. Okay. Can you give me a rundown on that? I haven't looked into it at all.
Yeah, is anybody in on this? Oh no, okay, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Zed.run. It's so they're like worldwide digital horse races. So you can buy and breed horses and then you run them in races for cash. Now they do something a little similar to Sharuz where things are flat rates, like to enter a race, like $2. And then like the prize pool is made up of all the people that entered the race. So like a $2 race is like worth $28. And it's split between place 1, 2, and 3. And there's like 5 right now. There's like 5 races a minute, and it's just like 24/7, just like grinding horse races. But you get to like, so you build a stable, and then you like breed your horses. They have like stud services so that you can like list your horse and like your stud price, and then so you have to pay the stud price out. And so this guy that I know randomly, we just play Fortnite together, he is like one of the #1 people. He's making like 20 grand a month off of just breeding and racing, and he's like but he's running a company. So he's like, so he put out this tweet that was like, hey, like I'm killing on horse racing, but it's like killing my company. Like I've got these VCs, you know, I'm like, he's in there horse racing all day. So he hired a stable hand, and he got 100 requests for people. So he's like, I'll pay you like 3 to 5 grand a month just to like fucking deal with my horses.
Holy
That's
shit.
amazing.
So he's got like hundreds of horses. New York Times did this like he's not even that big of a fish, but like he's in the press. He knows tech people. So like New York Times like included him in like a story about it, of like it exploded. And he got into this because his dad got into it.
Weird. That's funny.
He was like, my dad was pressuring me the whole time. He's like, now I'm just like addicted. So it's just this, obviously it's like an entire deep, it's like Axie Infinity, right? Where like,
Yeah.
it's just deep and there's horses going for like 300 grand. And so he bred all my he bred me 4 horses. And I guess, yeah, and I just paid him in ETH. And so I've been running and I've got a couple first places.
There you go.
Best day of my
That's
life.
amazing.
And so how does this tie into Polygon? Like what's the technical
All of it's
connection?
happening on Polygon,
Okay.
but to the user, it is obfuscated. You are just
Got
signing
it.
with your MetaMask and they
Nice.
take care of the rest. You
Okay,
don't
and
even,
then-
I don't even know if you know it's on Matic. It's just if you go on like OpenSea, you see the like Matic logo,
Mhm.
Interesting.
like the ETH purple.
Yep.
I really think that format is like the best UX for like the next year or two.
Totally,
Yeah.
exact. For the next year or two, I mean, it might be like 3-4 years and it might become like the de facto standard, but exposing people to L2s is like it's too much. Like MetaMask is too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the effective like front end on this is so I was thinking about this in terms of like posting blocks or whatever, and then having the wallet pop up every time. Like, and trying to think about like, is that a feature or is it a friction, like, because one way, if the friction is helping you like be intentional about what you're putting on the chain, or I mean, you'll just, I'm testing it, so I'm just like blah 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 blah, and then hit, and then like I'm just pushing it straight through, which means that like I'm going to continue to do that and not think about it every time, right? Which means that it's probably going to disappear as part of the process. And I don't know if there's another abstraction here where there is something that can be handled at like the squad buys in like some set number of posts up front or something like this, and then you get like a tally that you can pull from, or say, there's these kinds of models or something. Is less friction in getting your thoughts into the system. This is something that we're going to look into. Obviously, we'll talk about this down the road, but that's reminding me of these sort of like figuring out how to hide the things that don't need to be there and like bubble up the stuff that does. So yeah, I'm still like trying to figure out all these patterns because I'm not playing with Web3 horses yet. So I'm not seeing all of the like newer patterns on this stuff. But yeah.
Well, I got 26 more days until I can breed. Every horse has to grow up before it can breed. So it's a 30-day wait, cool off period. So I'll breed you guys all horses.
Well, just what I need.
Yeah, I want to play around with this. This sounds amazing. You realize it's so like alive already.
Yeah. Well, it's similar to the plant stuff that you were talking about, like growing and breeding and more.
What's that?
It's just some sort of culmination of like a lot of the conversations we've been having, but I'm kind of seeing like some weird parallels to just like how plants work and NFTs, and like in like water and sunlight are ingredients, so there's a time component. And Kristen brought in like the whole idea of cycles and harvesting and the ability to move them into like collections and then nurture them together. But mostly I'm interested in the idea of like NFTs that crossbreed with each other and generate new seeds that like have the genes carry over. And I've been kind of looking for projects similar to this, but most of the plant-based NFT stuff right now is very much like, here is a picture of a plant, or here is like a sequence of things that needs to be watered. I think crypto orchids is one, but they don't really have the interactivity like laterally. They're more just like one dimension in time. So yeah, I'm very, very curious to like poke at this and maybe
cool.
play around.
There's a cool mechanic that so with the horses, there's a second site that's just reading all their chain and building like analytics. So it's like every race and like all the the best links, because like each track is a different link. So it's like, oh, this is my like long haul trucker horse, and this is my like shorter sprinting horse. And so they're doing all this, but all this just like public data. But they added this kind of mechanic it's so dumb. It doesn't do anything, but it's so interesting to me. Is there's just a button on every horse on the entire this third-party site, which is made in Bootstrap, and there's like a feed this horse, and when you feed it, it gives you an alert that's like thanks, but this has nothing to do with Zedrun. This is just a company put a button that makes an alert, but it's like but.
Yeah.
Allowing some third party, now suddenly they're like, well, we keep track of which one's alive or dead.
Interesting. Okay, so they've literally taken this like stream of data and just added another stream on top, and they're like, you're now
Exactly.
interacting with like a framed representation of the original.
They're not doing that, but that's just I'm like this.
They
this
can,
is
yeah.
something
I
to
guess
watch. A third
built up
party
the-
keeping track and saying like, yeah, that one's not worth that much because we say it's dead.
Yes.
You killed it. This person killed it. This owner killed this.
It's so interesting because it only has as much authority as people give it, which is kind of already what the whole thing is.
Yeah.
Social authority.
Just taking that one step further.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, which is tied to some manner of utility and fun. Like if the story or the world that architecture is building is one in which people want to live, then they'll enact it because they'll use the thing, which makes it legitimized, you know.
It's like the crypto dragons, right? Did you guys follow that at Post Kitties? No. So it was like, I mean, this is super early days, but it was like this kind of mental hack on composability. And so so there's crypto kitties, right? And everyone's bringing out the crypto kitties and it's like the biggest thing in the world. So somebody launched crypto dragons. They're like, oh, it looks like a knockoff, right? And it's like, but you have to feed them crypto kitties to keep them alive.
No.
So people started breeding cheap crypto kitties to use as feed.
Wow.
This stuff is amazing.
This is yes.
This is
I mean, these
ludicrous but awesome.
I mean, these patterns like make a lot of sense. Like they're like we're just kind of doing a little bit more not grown up, kind of grown up versions of this kind of thing. Like our reputational system is like based on like potentially burning something of value, like either knowledge work or something like this, and or to encode it into something that goes on chain or whatever. It's a similar kind of effect. It's just less fun. I mean, it's fun in its own right. It's just not feeding cats to dragons.
Yeah.
I suppose it could be.
I'm definitely designing a monster that eats our blocks.
That's great. Perfect.
Gotta be fed.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, so your whole delete system could be like some characterized, like, pit of something to like throw it in the volcano of deletion or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that. Personifying some of these things. They're like, I mean, we've been talking about this, like they're kind of like operations that are deities. And like you can move your NFT or, whatever your thing of substance into some realm or some, yeah, I like that. I like personifying the processes. That's fun. Interesting. All right. Need to put googly eyes on all our buttons.
What's the dragon thing called?
I think it's called Crypto Dragon.
Found another one, Dragonarium. It's the same sort of thing, like you could breed dragons, but they're really cute.
It could be, yeah. I don't think it's called Crypto Dragons. There's Hyper
Level
Dragons,
up your
there's
dragon.
Ever Dragon, there's Dragon Chain. And there's the one you're talking, there's Dragon Coin.
The little dragon.
One of those.
The frequently asked questions include, how do I get a Genesis dragon?
That sounds cool. I don't know what it is, but it sounds.
I want one of those. Dragon Prime.
To participate in Genesis egg distribution.
Yeah, eggs, dragons, makes sense. Why it fits well. Yeah. I'm really like curious about the way NFTs might feel when they evolve and you need to socially interact to progress that evolution. So like I get something in my wallet and maybe like kind of cool, but is there something I can do with other people that then like makes our collection of our set of things even better?
Yeah.
What arena does that happen in? This is I'm kind of curious about Zed Run, like what does the actual UX feel like when you're going to this thing and are you moving NFTs around from your wallet, or is your wallet just signing like a couple of transactions in the process? And what does the stable like look and feel like? Kind of like how does it feel like playing a video game, or does it feel more like sending transactions around? And where's the line between those two?
And I think that that's what they was saying, like the personification of these functions, right? It's like turning like ones and zeros into pixels instead.
Yeah. So currently, does it work like, is it gambling? Is it just like a gambling interface? Is that where this stuff is coming from? Like, because there's all the,
at some level ends up with gambling.
well, sure.
But
Like,
sorry, I mean, in this stuff, it's like all of this is like some sort of weird gambling.
Yeah. But are the companies that are, or people or groups or whatever that are building this stuff, do they have like, do you know if they have like gambling as their background? Because there's all the, I know this from like working in Vegas. There's like Capcom has its like gambling departments, and you've got the entire firms that are working on like front ends for slot machines and this kind of thing. I don't know if there's any overlap with that in these kinds of, yeah, I don't know if you know.
See it being that, or like folks that worked at like Zynga or
Yeah, that makes sense.
along those lines.
Yeah, I don't know. Guess we could go look at, we could do if we can put together a list of some of these UIs and stuff, it would be fun to like sort of poke at them together, like in real time, and like see if we can, like put a wallet together and we can just start tossing like dust at some of these things if that's possible at all, and then sort of figuring out the patterns on that. I think that'd be a good like understanding club kind of thing. It'd be fun. Plus,
That's
we're gonna run.
Or go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's also like starting to build up like a DAO treasury, because at that point, if we're going through the process, we'll have like a buzzard stable.
Totally.
Like maybe that turns into something.
It's worth a shot. I mean, and then if somebody's around who wants to manage that stable, they can go ahead and do that. Because
hire somebody for $5,000 a month.
Exactly. Once we're killing it,
we can just take the Iron Titan code base and clone it.
Iron Titan, is that another one?
Oh, sorry. It's the largest stablecoin failure in crypto history.
Oh, perfect.
It's the one that Cuban lost all the money on.
Oh, that's right. Weren't you involved? Didn't you have something with that?
I have this great little story. So we were involved in it because somebody on Reddit found Cuban's DeFi address. And so we could see all its positions. So everyone's like, oh, he's like all in on this one stable coin. And like, it was honestly, it was all pretty interesting. And so we go in, it was just like 800% return in like a matter of like no time. So like we made out, we did okay on it, but I still had a bunch. And then like one morning I get like 100 texts and like the whole thing is just like going, I mean, it was like the Hindenburg or something. And so everybody's trying to get out, the system locks up, people can't get out of their LP token. And it was this whole mayhem. And I just sat back and just watched it go down, right? And so in the end, the very end, because I was like, well, at this point, like it's down so far, like if it curves back up, I'll make something a little bit more, but like I'll just take zero. And so I went down with the ship and still have my LP token. At the very end, I tried to trade it out, but like the gas fees were like worth like 10x than the one I was selling it for.
Yeah.
So I was like, whatever, I'll just keep it. So then this guy launched an NFT project that was like, it was called Proof of Rug. And it was like anybody that went down with the ship and still had the LP token in their wallet could claim a commemorative NFT.
I love it. It's such a good,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So it's like, oh, this was worth the whole thing. Like whatever the loss is, it's like me. It's like Cuban has one of these NFTs, and there's like 200 of them.
Oh my god!
It's one for the trophy room.
So I connected. So if you guys followed the Party DAO movement from last week, my old partner Michael was in on that, and so I was telling him this Titan thing, and he was like, oh, like hook me up. So I found the guy that made that, and I connected him because they've got this now DAO around this 3.5 million punk that they own. And so they've got their own Discord. It's like this like whole like community is like breaking out of this amongst the owners, right? There's like less than 1,000 owners, and which is a lot of people.
Yeah.
But they're like all like hyper committed right now. They have a $3.5 million asset. Like they're all very committed in like how this goes. But their DAO is like managed by dead tokens. So their dead tokens shows their ownership in the zombie punk. So they all got their distributions of that. And so same thing, he was like, so they had this social problem, like the social problem with the fractional NFTs is like, are you allowed to set as your avatar?
Yeah.
Because that's all anybody's buying these things for anyway. So like, the NFT creators are just like, we're staying out of this. Like this is a Twitter problem, not an us problem. So everyone's like iterating and trying to find this different one. So this new dead DAO, Party of the Living Dead, I think is the name of it. They were like, okay, what do we do about this? Because we can't have like 1,000 people have the same avatar. It makes it worthless. So they were like, they came up with an idea, which was we can use it, but you can use a augmented one, right? So everybody contributed what they thought an augmented one was like. My business partner was picked, and he just put like a party hat emoji on the punk. So that's like, this is, you're a dead owner of this punk. And we can all use this to show that this is a party. This isn't like, I'm not claiming ownership of this, right? So they did that in the Discord, and he posted the image in there, and everybody voted on the images with emojis. And then that one was picked. And so it's like, okay, now everybody set that. But then he was like, we need this as an NFT. We need to prove ownership that you were here in that initial dead, that you have rights to use this. So I contacted him with that guy that did that, and like in like an hour and a half, he like just sent the GitHub, and he was like, here it is, like just deploy and ship it. And they deployed it like that afternoon, and then like distributed that token to everybody in the Discord.
Just to double check, does this mean there's now one set of NFTs, all of which have or essentially giving them permission to use this image of the single emoji on the character, or does everybody get to pick an emoji and have a unique
it's that image. Everybody
that single
decided. It's like a party hat and like the party horn thing.
Got it.
It's like looks like shit, but like on purpose, like it's
yeah
fine.
So it's just like in other words, just like another virtual layer on top of this existing like set.
Exactly. Right. But it's there's just one. It's like the official.
That makes sense.
Pays for the minting costs.
Say it again.
As part of the claim, each person has to pay for the minting fee.
They all have to pay their minting fee, right, to get it.
And
how does that coordinate? Yeah, sorry.
Say it again.
Well, I guess how much that was the minting fee, and what are the factors in how much?
I'm not sure. Do you know what I'm guessing it was like what, $30?
It would just be the gas fees on the transaction.
That's
so basically that contract could just look at like, look, who is the sender? Does that sender hold any of these dead tokens? If so, allow them to mint.
Yep.
Yeah, when he got it, I was like, send me some dead tokens so I can get one of these NFTs. And he was like, nah, man, place a bid on OpenSea. He like immediately listed his NFT for sale.
Interesting. Yeah, that world. I mean, I've passed on the entire thing because like I don't have the energy to keep up. So I love hearing all the mechanics. It's cool. Yeah, so they're figuring out the fractional, like, and then the front end on that, like basically and then you've got proof on chain. So like who's calling anybody out? Like, is anybody like is there like the equivalent of like stolen valor on these things? Is that like the general idea?
It's like the Discord is like, I guess what governs that. And I'm sure there's some people that are doing whatever they want. And
of course,
if they're in the group, then it's like, do you want to get ostracized? Like it's
there's social pressures in the Discord. Have you been hanging out in the Discord at all? Like in any of those?
I wasn't allowed. He told me like the next, he was like, oh, because I was up till 2. Look what happened last night. And I was like, thanks for the invite. And then he's like, oh, hook me up with people to help me.
Well, that's what happens.
So he owes me one. The next project I'm in on it.
There you go. Yeah, I like moving a lot slower than all this. I like feel like a turtle.
Life in the slow lane.
Yeah, man. Cool though. Okay, got all kinds of new mechanics to worry about. It's cool though. They're getting figured out like rapidly though.
Day by day, there's like
Yeah.
two complete new like books you have to read. I love it.
This feels like it's a little tied into CJ, your musings like yesterday or the day before, where you're kind of asking about like a social response to something that happened on another chain, like some sort of derivative thing of like a chain plus my identity plus somebody else's identity, like and like a shape for that, like a consistent protocol. But it wouldn't be a protocol, right? I think it would be something more like a funnel that one type of NFT goes into and another like set of identities goes into, and then it's kind of like I picture the emoji reactions on messages in Slack and stuff right now, where the emojis are very standardized. They don't really have any like value. Like nobody owns like the rocket emoji, but that rocket emoji plus your identity plus the identity of the author plus the content, that combination of things is what like has some meaning. Yeah, I don't know. Like, is there like some sort of just meta social reaction that's going to be like a type of NFT, and then presumably all of the people or all the identities in that get to like share it somehow benefit from it, from the use of it.
Yeah, that's weird.
I think one of the things about that is like, how do you begin to define that in a way that like other people will integrate? Like, is that just Ethereum itself is like letting people just define like something and saying like, okay, there's like some reaction token, and like if other people choose to read from that like value on this website, they can, and then that adds like some new UI to it. Like, is it like I think that's the flow that I don't quite understand yet. Is like, is it just by the process of like minting something that's very specialized, like anyone can now pull from it, but like you're kind of like exposing a library? Or does it make sense to more have like a library that has like a bunch of these things combined that now you just like import it to your website? Or like maybe that's like a downstream effect of having that in the first place. But I think that like idea of, and I mean, initially it came out of like, even within like honeycombs and blocks, like how are we going to reply to something like that? That's where I think it fundamentally came from, is like, how are we going to reply to something? And I think I was reading another website and I was like, I want to add a reply to this. And I know there's like hypothesis, but I'm like, hypothesis is not open, but if it's open in the sense like anyone can comment on a web page or do anything, that would be much more helpful. So at what point does it need to be like this relationship piece really need to be pointing to a block versus just saying like, this is the thing that I'm pointing to, and here is some text on IPFS that is the response, and there's some schema defined associated with it that says, okay, I can display that in some way, like if I have that Chrome extension or whatever it is. Like, it doesn't even need to be a Chrome extension, it could be natively on the web page, but some method of doing that. I guess like that's not too far from hypothesis either. So anyway, I'm like, I think it was like all of this, and then I don't know, reactions to like all of this stuff it comes from the same like fundamental like, what is a relationship? Because like a reaction is a relationship to some other post or whatever. Like it could be a moment in time on audio or anything. So it's just like, how is that defined? Does it make sense to more like universally deploy something that, like that? And that's what I get confused about, is does that need to be like Ethereum itself is solving that problem? Or is that like something that's like really like a downstream effect that can be like solved? Or is it just a rehashing of what's already been solved? I think like I keep running into that even with blocks themselves, is like Ethereum, like fundamentally, I'm like, if this is like a distributed key value store in some sense, like, or it can be operated as a distributed key value store. So if I'm using it like that for Ethereum, like, or for IPFS, like, I mean, like the whole, like having a token for a block, like I can't like quite like wrap my head around it, because it seems like the problem has already been solved and we're almost like wrapping the problem in a new problem and then like sending it out. As opposed to like just using the thing like at its most like base level and like I don't know, there seems to be like something missing there that I don't quite understand myself.
So if I good.
I was just gonna say, I feel like you've gotten it. Like the closest thing would be, I mean, to what John described, where you want to define a relationship between all those different entities. Like the closest thing right now would be in 1155, where you have like a token for each reaction type, and then that maps somehow to, you know, who sent it, what NFT is that referencing, what other metadata might be associated with it. But I think it's also like more likely the right solution longer term is somebody makes a new token standard, and then it becomes like kind of a standard kind of reaction token standard, right? Like if you look at ERC 721, which is its own, you know, big thing now, it really was just saying, what if each ERC 20 had its own metadata associated with it? And then that turned into a gigantic standard with all these different use cases. So I think all these like proposals for token standards are kind of like working on like fundamental kind of stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're all already ahead of the curve in terms of like trying to figure this stuff out. And then somebody's probably working on like a serious proposal where they're mapping all that stuff out. Cause I don't think 1155 natively is gonna do it, because it needs some like multi-layered mapping stuff.
Yeah, the front end I mean, all of this stuff just feels like layers. You have like the content in the system. I can't tell if you're CJ, you're saying that like storing the content in the way that we are is like abstracting something else, or if you're talking about something else. But like having I mean,
I think yeah, so it's like how we're choosing to store information almost seems like the most like fundamental way you could use an ERC 721 in a way. It, like in some sense, it's just like we are having an NFT that has a content hash, and like that's effectively like all we're really doing. Like it's a very like simple implementation, and it's like pretty much the token standard itself. So yeah, I think like thinking about that, I mean, I wonder like, is it even necessary to have that token itself? And I guess like in the context of Ethereum, like it is necessary, but it almost seems like it's I can't like I don't know what I'm trying to describe.
Yeah, let me take a stab at it.
Sure.
Because I'm also like maybe off in some corner here, but we're right now like publishing content plus identity and into something that can be moved around. But that means that every like downstream type of content also needs to fit into that frame versus being able to publish data somewhere like agnostically and then simply publish our own like descriptions of the relationship between two other pieces of content to it. And is it possible to kind of separate those out so that that data question is taken care of by something that's like extremely consistent and easy by everybody else, or something that exists already that we can adopt, and they essentially get more specific about our unique piece here, which is like this definition of relationships.
Yep.
So is there an existing like decentralized publishing standard or something like that may make sense, or people who are working on one or something? Is that kind of, and then we can sort of tie on a front end that's like more annotation layer or reputation layer, or you know, any number of those kinds of things, and each one can have like sort of different like mechanics. So if you have one that is more like a like button, obviously you're going to get like button style, you know, playing fields effectively. And if you have something that it is more nuanced, like say for instance the rocket has some meaning, and that meaning is undergirded by the fact that you have to pay or do something with reputation to be able to offer one of these things at all, right? Like the like button is something that Twitter gives you to use, you know, willy-nilly or whatever. Like it is only scarce in the sense that you can do one per or whatever. So different weighting systems that are like arranged to produce a different kind of result in the
Well, and that can be up to
ecosystem.
the poster too, right? Of like the person
Yeah.
receiving it or the person sending it. Like either like all rules are off when, because it's the whole point of this is it's a direct relationship. It's a reaction directly to that person, and it's not adding to account, right? To be publicly displayed. It can be, but that's not the goal of like to show popularity. It's like no, it's a relation. It's saying rocket ship to you, like
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess a bunch of those individual relations might then be aggregated to create some sort of like public view, but it's not happening in a public arena by default, right? It's like a very personal thing, and it's when that personal thing is seen in the context of a bunch of other people that has value to those people and the original authors.
it adds like quantified sentiment analysis. Where it's like, oh, you don't have to figure out the language here. You could like there's meaning attached to it.
I mean, part of what we're
embedded in the
seems,
NFT.
Yeah, like and then so reading that, being able to interact with that meaning and then move through like data, being able to have that as part of your guide, like it ties into the queries this way potentially. Like you have different query views based on these different mechanics that you can then cross compare, I guess, on the same type of information if people are using them to interact with this information in this decentralized sphere of publishing or whatever it is. Yeah, I don't know. There's like some standard, there is some like, printing press thing that we agree on that like allows us to build this architecture on top of. And so is the feeling that you're feeling into, CJ, is that somebody is maybe doing this already, or like in a and we're rebuilding something that doesn't need to be, or
I think the sense that I get is that Ethereum is already accomplishing that, but I don't know if that feeling is like already is like correct or not, or rather like we are kind of building necessary tooling on top of what Ethereum provides. And I guess maybe the other like thing that I'm thinking about is like maybe a block itself is kind of like unique in a way that Ethereum has provided this and people are making it very specific in a lot of certain ways. And that means like, it is like very specific, but a block for us is like, to some extent, like very generic. Like it's literally just like data on the Ethereum that's pointing to IPFS. It's like very simple, which I think is fantastic. But then the relationship piece comes in and says, well, I guess like I can make a relationship between potentially like a web page that's not a block and like a block that I create, or like anything else. It could be tied to a completely different like ERC 721 token. It doesn't need to be a block. Like there doesn't have to be that inherent link. So maybe really the friction I'm feeling is just like more like necessity for like things to not be like so interconnected, is like thinking about these things as being like very separate from each other and not needing to like build them very intertwined by default. Because in a way, like that seems like a lot of the systems we've previously built, like Web 2 or Web 1 or like any computer system, is like these deeply like ingrained intertwined things. And it seems like Web 3 almost allows for a bigger separation between these things. So maybe it's like that separation of concerns at like a very fundamental level is like maybe more what I'm feeling into, is like, and doing that effectively. Because I think like, and I think maybe there's this tension between, like having a specific token for like all these specific like use cases, but is that like everyone's going to be kind of rebuilding a lot of the same patterns potentially. So it's like, how can you make an interface for that, like that anyone can use?
Or just that protocol. I think an interesting thing to go back and I remember reading this article in an airport in like 2004 or something. It was a Wired huge spread article. It was like right when like Web 2 was like beginning to happen, like figuring out how to make money, right? And then it was this like, what's Web 3, right? Like this huge think piece. And how they described it was that it's basically what came out of like schema.org. it was like data site or like data descriptors of like this is a presentation layer of this content, and this is what everything in that content means. This is not only the author, but like when you reference somebody like Wikipedia or like Rome, right, of like how to like what is everything and what does it stand for and what is its ID. And that's how they kind of envisioned it. And they envisioned having like you could like toggle between like JSON view or like content view.
Yeah.
Obviously it was like completely wrong, but I think with this, I think it's something to go back and read, right? Of like, you know, what are things again? Like, let's redefine what things are. And the presentation layer is like completely abstracted.
Mm-hmm.
CJ, on the tension between like, is Ethereum already solving this, or does something need to get built for it? My view on that is that while Ethereum kind of does most of the work there, if there's use cases that are not being satisfied yet, then that is an opportunity to go and, you know, create that stuff around. And then in terms of adoption, my theory is that if you can build like good tooling around stuff and have that underlying protocol be flexible enough that people can build what they want on top of it, that's like a winning strategy right now in terms of just like making useful stuff that people will want to pick up. At least that's what I'm like kind of like the internet camera stuff. I'm kind of going with that strategy on. I'm just like, do something simple, make it flexible, build good tooling around it, communicate interesting use cases, and like maybe that strategy leads somewhere. But I think, yeah, like if Ethereum isn't solving that use case entirely yet, then that's a big opportunity to like bridge that gap and make it really easy for developers to pull in like some kind of feedback loop system into whatever app they're making.
Yeah, and like something being possible in Ethereum versus like Ethereum doing it is something very different. It's like if Ethereum's the atom, it's like, well, somebody's got to build like the protein, right? That like just connects a couple of these things together and is now that de facto.
Yeah,
because you can't wait around for Ethereum, right? Like, like 5 years later.
I mean, they have to move at a pace that is slower because they're governing so much stuff now, and that's just, you know, they're moving a container ship. So like we can come in and like test models or whatever, and if some of those get taken up and they are useful in the sense because they've been designed in such a way that is in alignment with what Ethereum is doing or how it's developing, or cross chain or whatever it is, then you know, this is how these things can become standard because people are just tying into the protocol, right, rather than some governing body like sort of dictating that or whatever. I think that I mean, this is how I'm coming at it. This is why it's exciting to me, is that you can come and like dream up one of these things, and the only way that it will become reality is if you implement it in such a way that people can play with it properly, right? So like that's the underlying ethos of building with this.
And that's what Shariz is doing so well with that, like Polygon in the back, right? Like, business in the front, party in the back, like do all the transactions behind the scenes and like obfuscate that, right? Like she was just saying, like this next year is going to be this year of obfuscation of L2s, and I totally can get behind that.
Yeah, I think part of this too is like building like our best guess at any of this and putting it out, and then somebody who's already done this or is thinking in alignment will be like, well, I've done this better, or I was trying this piece or whatever. You know, it's like, this is the building in public part of it. Like just do an okay job and put it out, and that's it's a conversational like game. So I don't know, because you're going to need a lot of brains to figure this thing out properly, in any sort of like, because the complexity space is like fucking nth dimensional, like for the types of things that we're trying to do. Like even talking about a reaction system, the reason that the reaction systems we have right now are so shitty is because like they're focused into this tiny group of people who are making a decision for an enormous, and you can't design, civilizations don't work like that. There are too many different types of people. So like part of the what I'm feeling into is the ability to have these different types of systems be able to like have lenses that you can switch out, right? So like I want to look at the world through this kind of lens, and that is mediated by these relational, like whatever these relational mechanisms can be. They can be money, they can be, you know, something that's attached to social capital, or they could, you know, be like random art projects, you know. Yeah, I don't know, but having these, I think it's a feature when we have something that is so composable that the potential possibilities of the thing are like way beyond anything that we can imagine as a small group. So yeah, I don't know. That's what I keep coming back to every time I like try to design one UI for this thing. It's like like this is the worst possible thing I can make, because all of the other cool ideas that could be made with this thing, given somebody who's, you know, thinking about it from some weird perspective. But, you know, yeah, I don't know. I keep running into that one.
That's interesting. There's something like interesting also to be said about reactions may have come out of people naturally gravitating towards just leaving emojis in the comments, and then the UI designers, product designers being like, oh, how do we make this more convenient because it's already like an emergent behavior. So Web3 makes like the emergent behavior kind of stuff really interesting, because then people can immediately build around that, and then they can build on top of things that are existing already. So they don't have to worry about like, you know, am I going to be able to access that content that I want to in my preferred way? The answer is always yes.
Yeah. I mean, you
like
can trust. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, just like the are these horses alive? Like that's completely separate from the original creators and a bunch of people that want to communicate about the original thing in that way. Just do, and like you can't really stop them. You can't, but nor can you like incentivize it. It's just like completely emergent.
And I think that's the thing, is like you have to just build stuff you have to roll with those punches. Like you have got to let the dragons eat your kitties. Like that's the point of this, right? It's like iterate in public, and like all the code's there, like go steal it, like because it's social mechanics, and it's like that's what that's the space I came from, and I'm sure that it all came from that at some point, because it's like ruled the world for 10 years.
Yeah, it's about designing playgrounds now, like you know, giving stuff for people to play with, and then being opinionated in the thing that you're talking about, CJ, like keeping them set. There's an ethos to designing primitives like that will be taken. I mean, Sharuz is doing it with the film stuff, you know, like there's something in here with that like, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird, uncertain way of building though, because like we're not building like one product that does a thing that like solves a very specific problem and then like a very simple flow between them. We're sort of like running into like this like hyperdimensional like problems. How can this solve the most problem space with the minimum amount of like surface area? And then if you get a bunch of these, they work like alphabets, right? Like the letters can be combined into something that's larger and like sort of infinite. So yeah, I've not designed a lot of stuff like this, so it's
a good analogy.
Like breaking my mind. Yeah.
Are you
I
feeling
hate to be party poop, but I have to jump right now. So
sure.
Nice meeting everybody.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah,
nice meeting you.
Good to see you.
Discord. All right. Bye guys.
Say hi to your horses.
Are you feeling unmoored, CJ, and like where we're at right now? Because there's
no. I think
there's
it's
like
more
a fractal of we could design our next playground. Like maybe if that's where we're at, like we're too broad somehow.
Ooh, I mean, there's two things like right now that I'm like very interested in, like in particular. One is the like figuring out this relationship stuff like a little bit deeper, because like my brain is totally broken on it in some sense. Like I think like it's very like everything in that space is very possible, but it's figuring out like effective patterns through it that make sense. And some of that, like, because I think we already know like there are UI patterns that can be applied for that kind of stuff, like whether it be commenting or reacting or like all this kind of thing. The second thing is actually more the plant stuff. Like I keep thinking about that, and it's just very fun seeming, right? It's more like less serious and just like cool, and like I'm thinking about it in terms of like generative art, and like I've never really tried to do that before, and thinking about it, I'm like, this is kind of like Conway's Game of Life, and I guess some people are approaching it from that perspective, and a little bit like Minecraft, and you're like, you basically have like a seed, and like that can be like a, you know, whatever, like you can define it somehow, or have it be just completely random, and then like something emerges out of that seed. And like I don't know, it's very interesting. And there's a time component with ticks, and like at least to me, like that time component, it feels to me, well, it feels like certain distributed systems work that I followed previously, but it also feels like video games as well, as like having a tick where something happens like every 100 ticks or every 100 blocks, right? Is like in Minecraft, I don't know how many ticks make up a day, but it's like now all of a sudden it's like a new day, and like you can actually start building around that in a way in like a video game concept. So like it, like that idea has kind of just got my mind thinking, like, I don't know, some of these more like gamey kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's virtualizing time. It's again, it's temporal stuff. Like like you're tying. There's meaning and relevance to a particular like sliver of the ticks, right? Like I imagine, you know, something, if you were to process something or to interact with something during that sliver, you know, it has a different effect, and then there are corresponding effects up the, yeah, there's probably, yeah, a bunch of game design stuff around this for sure. Yeah, that's
and
cool.
there's something weird there too with like having multiple chains, because they're like, at least in physical time space, like they're all different for the most part. Like Bitcoin might be 15 minutes, Ethereum is 5, Polygon is 2 seconds. Like now it's like, now there's like this weird like tick conversion, and things are like happening at different rates on all of these. It's like, I don't know, it's like just kind of weird, yeah. Like
You
that
could
is a
always
fractal.
sync things back up using the Unix time, but it is cool with the block, like time, time per block is different per chain.
Yeah.
Probably some gameplay to design within that tension.
Yeah, it's like you can move through like worlds kind of, or like if you travel to this world, like something evolves faster in that world and you bring it back.
Oh, I see.
But there could be like
Portals.
costs
Yeah.
associated with it, or like whatever.
Yeah.
The time moves a lot faster if you're on some planet somewhere where the gravity is different.
Exactly.
Yeah, the whole interstellar thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is another like Howl's Moving Castle thing. Like, you know, and you can, I mean, so there are mechanics here then. I hadn't thought about that at all. Yeah, where you have like, yeah, you were moving something into a different chain to have it like mature in a certain way, or like be like available for a certain type of thing for some set period of time, which has a cost affected, you know, and then the people who come to interact with that piece of something could have a different, so it's like adding a patina, because, you know, or something, and you bring it back into some other environment, and it is carrying over like some effect from that other place. That's interesting. Weird. Yeah, I have no idea what you use that for. Like the thing that's coming to mind is like, I don't know, you're like trying to create a like a vintage lamp or something, and you put it in, and you're like, I'm gonna sell this thing, and I'm gonna like speed up the time on it or whatever. It rusts a little, and you pull it back into, you know, consensus time. Yeah, I don't know what.
There would effectively need to be some like cost, some back and forth, some some balance there. And how does that balance get defined? It's kind of this like separation of concerns, sort of, where everybody is following like the laws of physics to some extent, but like if you're gonna have worlds in which those laws are in some way like nullified, what is the corresponding costs of that?
Yeah.
Like,
some social friction makes sense immediately, right? And it's this is again like reputational tokens being burned, or like some previous work that has been done in an altruistic way, or some other way, like some proof of work that you can then spend on this thing to grow, to like actualize your reputation in some object. Again, this is a voting mechanism, or something like this. It's something better than that, obviously, if it's also workable rather than just spendable. Yeah, every time we
workable is
talk,
very interesting. Yeah. I mean, maybe something that is neither burned nor spent, but like invested, or like plugged into something else that like during that state, you know, it has extra qualities that weren't achievable when it was a part And while it's there, it like enables another type of growth to happen.
It's smart staking effectively. Like, so you encode in the stake some like environmental condition that is only possible while staked, right? Like that can, yeah, I don't know. Like you could create a pool of these. So if you have the plant thing or whatever, people can pool together and then create a little game that says like, while your NFT is within this like pool, however it does that technically, like we are offering this kind of thing that can come of it, right? And then there's an economic exchange or a social dynamic exchange, and it can only last for a little bit because it's cost prohibitive or something like that. And then that imbues whatever you have put in there, like, you know, you get sparkles on your stems, and it's only possible by participating in this other little group or something like that, where the sparkles are generated by prayers in staking or something. Yeah, I like these little social coordination things. They're wholesome.
Very.
It's less degenerate gambling with your horses. Beamer is so crazy. I love it.
That blew my mind. I was like going crazy as he was talking about this. The whole second, like the meta layer on top of it.
Oh yeah,
this is too perfect. Like this is too too funny.
Well, it's the kind of thing that Charuz, you were talking about, these like toys that are like pulling up the layers of the data. Like there's all these sub stories that are happening, and you can put buttons on them. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
But both of the things CJ was mentioning, the reactions and then the plant NFTs, like, does it make sense to do like a breakout project like channel or category in Discord? And because neither seems like they're part of the core code base for what we're working on so far.
Yeah, should it maybe be a channel per, and kind of following that style for future things that don't feel like a separate project, but do feel like it's maybe like a separate project entirely, but obviously like don't fit into the Honeycomb's code base quite yet.
Yeah.
But in a future world, have like
To be
some
integrated.
interplay between them.
Yeah.
Actually, I have one more too. This was all spawned out of the day that I had coffee, pretty much. So I don't have coffee very often.
You should do it more often.
No, you shouldn't. Too many ideas.
So yeah, that's the problem. So the other one actually had to do with Mirror. So I have a problem with Mirror because I want to track a lot of people, and I'm a very like, I've used RSS for so many years, and even like one of the creators of Mirror is like, RSS sucks and there needs to be a Web3 native way, and I'm like, yeah. I actually deconstructed like how Mirror is like creating their posts, like doing all this, because I'm gonna build an RSS feed for everyone's Mirror. Like I'm just gonna do it because I figured it out and I really needed my RSS. But it got me thinking, like, what is the way to do RSS on Web3? I don't have a ton of ideas there, but I did like roundabout find that there's EIP 1337, which is a subscription mechanism. I didn't look into it very much, but I thought like the subscription mechanism could be interesting and like maybe could act as a certain way of doing this. I don't know what the interface looks like, if it would allow for different subscription types that are non-monetary or some that are monetary, and like how you could monetize like a post per thing and like all this, you know. So like that was kind of like relevant on the side, like something that I'm thinking about, something I'm probably going to work on hopefully. Like I kind of want to finish it like next week, ideally, like just because I really need these RSS feeds like ASAP. Otherwise I'm going to go crazy. So
yeah, I mean, I have like, I keep finding rabbit holes, and then like half of them are Substacks and half of them are Mirror, and then, you know, then there's 14 other halves. So it's all just tabs now. I have no way of managing any of this anymore. What are you using as an RSS reader, by the way? Make something?
I use the old reader because it's most familiar to the Google reader, and it's not filled with ads like Feedly or something. I think I used Feedly for a while and then I moved out of it because it was annoying me. I don't remember why. It was so many years ago at this point. The old reader just works.
It's called the old reader?
Yeah.
Okay.
It works. It doesn't give me ads. Yeah, I've never had a problem with it. Most like RSS reader apps support it. The web one is not horrible.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Yeah, go ahead.
One thought I have, there's a service called Polite Poll or Poll Polite or Polite Feed or something like that, where you can go to a site that doesn't have RSS and define how they should parse that HTML into a feed. And then once you build it, anybody else can like adopt that sort of pipeline and use it. So it's a little bit like the graph in that sense, where one definition of something then like is usable by everybody. I kind of like this idea where you essentially you have this stage in which to build pipes, and pipes input and output are like totally separate. So you can say, I'm going to be aggregating a bunch of other things from a bunch of different sites for you, but here's your output, versus I'm just building one tiny pipe from like this person's HTML2 or HTML website to RSS, and like a little bit like if in that sense, where you always have this idea of like input and output. I think monetary like stuff fits into there too, because part of it is like I maybe want to be rewarded for my aggregation of all of these things, all the content. And then part of it is I maybe want to be rewarded for my technical translation here. And then of course there's a question of those people might want to be rewarded for their own content. So how do you make that like process? It's very explicit about like, if I'm charging you money, it's for this act that I did specifically and just compiling it. But if you want to send value to the original authors, like you do that. I'm not like trying to take value and then send them a portion of it. You do that directly. And for the most part, it does feel like that can happen pretty easily now, because you always have their addresses. You know, if they publish on Mir, you have their address right there. But that's harder and trickier to do if they're publishing from like Substack, because now Substack has its own payment medium. So you can kind of redirect them towards that. But yeah, I'm sort of seeing it like this whole arena of just plumbing. It's like, but it's very transparent, and anybody can like take it and say, I like this pipe. I'm going to like either add to this pipe, or I'm going to fork this pipe into what I needed to. But then there's lineage, and like changes can be stringed backwards and forwards.
Kind of goes back to what we were talking about like a few weeks ago with the ingest and export kind of stuff flows.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of projects.
Yeah.
There are.
Yeah, like annotation, ingest, export, like that seems very like also relevant. I think that like I'm thinking about relationships in that way too, is like how do you highlight a web page and have it go into this? It seems like extremely relevant. Because that would like automatically expose like what I'm reading, and if I found it interesting, as opposed to me like saying like, here's what I'm reading, like hopefully you find it interesting. It's like, no, here exactly is like what I was looking at.
One thought there is like, just really quick is that if it's highlighting Web 2 content, there will need to be something about like, we need to make sure that the content of the highlight exists in some way in 2 years, when, presumably like that content might have disappeared. And like mirroring web archive, IPFS stuff, like there's like a whole content insurance system waiting to be architected there. But that's where I think like, if you want to have people come in from the old world, then they need a way of like making sure that they can react to content that's in the old world, but in a way that's forwards compatible with the way that we're going to be doing it with Web3 stuff.
Yep, absolutely.
Dead links make me sad.
I mean, you could do this at the transaction level, so that a person like annotates something from Web 2, and then there's like effectively some cost to move it over into archive at the point, and then, you could do, if that cost is prohibitive, or if the person who is doing the highlighting doesn't want to cover the cost of that, I mean, they could also be rewarded in some way or whatever, or you could create a bounty to do it. There's all these kinds of mechanics that are potential there. So you can move things over slowly. Yeah.
Maybe you have like a highlighter that's full of ink, and it costs a certain amount, and you can only highlight so much, but each time you highlight, like it depletes, but that's kind of like film and translates to IPFS storage costs. Collaborative highlighters. Goodness.
Yeah, it can set up some system that stores it in perpetuity, and then you can put a front end on that. Like if people want to keep this thing alive somehow. I mean, this is also tied into I don't know how. There's a bunch of pitfalls to that potentially too. But yeah, I go back and forth on like the bridge between the old world and the new, and like the speed in which we can prototype models that like work with content that's in the new world, and the friction with the old world, that like lack of compatibility will be solved at the point that it is such a frustration. But if you have like a model that is like native to the environment, like you can figure out the patterns of behavior. I mean, this is always the trade-off here, right? Like you don't want to throw away all previous knowledge. That's the end result is like having some example of a system that can work natively in Web3, and then some, you know, like ideally you're going to have enough people who are going to be like, well, we need to port over things. I don't know in stages how that goes. My instinct is that you build the scaffolding in a scrappy prototype to show what you can do, and then that is the like dream momentum to get the next round built or whatever. But I don't know with that. Like you could probably justify it the other way around too, that we've got this giant pile of stuff or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. There's a novelty aspect to having something work natively, and I mean this. So what I was going to ask you, CJ, is like this, are you just seeing like hyper RSS here? Like that's the layer of this, that it just it is syndication in the sense that like things can move around, but it has other social layering, like the following or subscribing or these kinds of things are baked in naturally, like as primitives. Is that kind of what you're like syndication done in Web3 or yeah?
Like to some extent, like at least for like in terms of RSS pieces, like how can, I mean, and I think we touch on this in some sense as well, is like how can you generically create a feed like from anything, and it's just a feed of like you know, like whatever, and how that feed is defined like at the most top level, and being able to display it in something like very, very generic. And then like there are these mechanisms of like subscribe and pay, and like, or you know, like those things could be added on top, and those are already like things in Web 2 to some degree. It's like how can you make it more fluid, or how could you even add like microtransactions onto it, so it's like more pay per content as opposed to pay for the entire site, but you're only reading like one article a month or like whatever. You know, I think like some of those fluid transactions would actually allow people to access a lot more information without subscribing to the New York Times, for example. Like maybe I want to read like 1 or 2 New York Times articles a month because it gets linked, and I would more than happily pay a microtransaction directly to the creator of that article. But New York Times is the curator, and I could pay them if I really care about that curation, but I should also be able to pay directly the person who did it. I think that's what John was touching on as well. So I think like all these things are in play, but I really just want like a generic feed that I can display somewhere, like a way of creating that feed and then displaying it. And I think how to create that, I think, is not clear. Like Mirror is nice in some sense because it is Web3 native mostly. It does have like some Web 2 components or like some hidden things, but mostly it's Web3 native. So like that's nice, but it doesn't seem like there exists like a Web3 native way of consuming this, as far as I know. Like in a way, is like if you were to create like you would have to create another schema of like how do you have a feed and then consume it. In some sense, like we do have that with blocks as well. Like we are creating a feed out of blocks. Does feed need to be an interface itself? Like how is that? You know, like a post is kind of a feed, like it's a collection. So I wonder, like as we move into the post, whether we're going to kind of tackle some of that as well. It seems like these problems are all like in the background and maybe not like very urgent, but it seems like they'll kind of bubble up naturally as we try to do things within like our system as well.
I think like the queries also become natural kind of feeds. Whether or not it's actually like spitting out, you know, RSS XML or not, each query I think is functionally, which is really cool, because at that point, like right now, we want to subscribe to somebody's RSS. If they're an author or a podcaster, you're going to get 100% of their content. Being able to do custom queries, even being able to like merge multiple authors into, you know, a new feed. All sorts of cool stuff there. But I think there's a big overlap with querying and feeds.
Yeah, and actually, I guess how you're saying that query is a feed, it also makes me think like the block is like very fundamental, because like you can kind of define it at any level. So you're just like, I'm going to query for a feed, and then we can display that. Like anyone can display a feed. It's so easy. And you have the type, and that will at least define like some basis of how to display it. So.
And RSS is like innovation, I guess, was being able to propose like every post should have a title, it should have a description, it should have a link, it should have a publish date. Here's how you should format them. Here's what your key, variable name should be. And then getting people to adopt that so that there's a healthy ecosystem of publishers and like client apps. It's just like, what is the standard post type that will fit as much content as possible? Which again, like that, I think that's what we were working towards with like the block schema.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think the best marketing, quote unquote, for this is to just make stuff that works cool. And then like people would be like, oh, this is rad. I can build on this. I could do all of this stuff with it and then offer it. So, I mean, I think our approach to just sort of like running ourselves into these problems, like we need it. We want to read this stuff. Like I want to read all this stuff too. Like I would love an interface where I could query things and like manage a bunch of these URLs, send the URL out. This is what I've been looking at. And like, if you look at this feed over this period of time, you will start to understand this piece of the world. It's an enacted snapshot, because the people who are putting content into the feed are building something. They are building a complex, like, I've never been able to do this. Like I can share one piece of content, and this is a look into a world that I've been looking at for like a year. And how the hell do you contextualize that if you just know the person? So this is like, follow this thing for a while, right? And you'll start to get a feel for this kind of, viewpoint on the world or whatever. And so those queries are enacted in that sense, and then they're bringing it. You could offer those as like, they're effectively like knowledge TV station kind of things, and that's just the one idea. There's so many entertainment possibilities, and like you could do so much weird shit with this stuff. I think that the queries as views is like a fundamental like component to all of this. Like I cannot see how we don't see this everywhere. It's just figuring out the best interpretation of it that we can for now. So yeah.
This is so interesting.
I mean, it ties back to that thing that you were doing, CJ, where you were just like populating feeds from stuff, right?
That's what I was thinking too. Is like I had the thing that I created an Instagram feed plus a YouTube feed and combined them. Like that was basically it. So this is the same thing. And actually, like as you were talking, I was like, oh, like at some point, like a small project is going to be integrating like internet camera feeds into this too. At least for me,
exactly.
Like, I would love to have that. That would be sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, so right now, like I am managing a bunch of these goddamn things, a bunch of these worlds, like in all of these systems, and I am slowly moving away from all of it. Like it has taken me years to disentangle, because I have all these Twitter lists, and then before that, I managed like each round of this stuff, like Delicious, I had all these bookmarks, and then Google Reader, I had an entire world built in that goddamn thing, and then podcasts, like I've managed multiple feeds there or whatever, and I've never been able to share these things, like because I found the weirdest versions of the world that like could be useful to the, and I the way I share it is by talking about like what I'm seeing and what's going on. Like Beamer is looking at a piece of the like Web3 ecosystem that I am fascinated, spend a lot of time in, because I'd lose all my money. So like, but I'd like to know what he knows, right? And Substack is doing a decent job of this, right? Like you can go find, and people are linking to each other. Like there's a sort of art Tumblr thing happening over there. But if I could curate that stuff and have feeds coming from wherever the content is being built, because like each of these different like instantiations are going to produce different types of content. It's the medium as the message kind of thing. I don't know. And then you could share that with people. You could develop pretty interesting media landscapes with this stuff. Like, and people will be able to think together a lot faster, because they would be able to find each other and then, see what each other are seeing, so that it closes the distance to understanding. because you can see through people's eyes. And some of that is going to be like, well, you need to look through my eyes for like a year and then you'll kind of understand what I'm saying. But at least that's on the table now. Whereas people have to manually do this. Like they have to like mark up what they're consuming. There is no way I can do this. There's no way because it slows me down too much. And like there is an upside to doing that. This is where our context fields come in. Like if I can have like, input in this is where I just annotate the thing that I'm watching. There you go. And then it's in a feed that you can consume. Like, you can see what I'm seeing. And then maybe that starts a conversation. Then you get conversational layer, all this stuff. But yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the very natural outcome of all of this is that there's these feeds happening and there's people at the very, very forefront of that feed, like discovering things and sending them off into the ether. But then there's people that are catching up at it like at very, very staggered intervals and possibly cyclically. And then they're responding or just like reacting or just linking, but whatever. But over time, like it's not just lost in this like dark history forest thing. It's being put somewhere that's like addressable and seeable by other people. And the idea of like backlinks exposed is just so fascinating. Like, oh, who's this person who liked these like two random posts of yours? Okay, let's go to their profile and like see. But you also maybe follow kind of a frame, so it's not just going straight to their big profile. It's kind of like this is a little bit like the pinning, where you see a version of their content that's somehow related to how you found it. Not a version, but maybe like a lens or a arrangement of it that makes it a little less intimidating to like stumble upon a new person in a new information landscape.
And for the author, I was thinking about this yesterday. I've been trying to figure out how I'm going to start writing again. Like, and there's a bunch of stuff out there. Like, I don't want to write in a standardized formal tone. I can't do it. Like, I'm not great at it. I prefer to do prose and weird stream of consciousness stuff. I don't want to edit a lot of things. I don't want to make things are moving too fast. And so I need to find a form that is more like suitable to like improv or like channeling, but still is coherent, right? Why did I bring this? Oh yeah, and so I was thinking about like, all right, well, I don't know who I'm writing for. I have no idea. Like, there are some subset of people out there in the world, but the world is so weird now that I can't be like, well, I'm looking for this demographic and I'm going to write to them. It's not going to happen, right? It's more like what we've been doing. We've been sort of feeling our way into the world, and then like frictions appear and then we play with it. And if it's interesting, great. So writing in that way is like writing towards an audience. Like you're just writing what's interesting to you in a form that is easy to, and then somehow people are going to pick that up. And if they pick that up, right, then knowing who they are and what they're also reading will probably give you an idea of where you are writing into. And so if you have this like informational stream where you are part of a query that somebody has put together, and this kind of worked with lists on Twitter, but not really, like, because Twitter fucking is a mess.
Because it's all or nothing. Yeah, if you're on a list, all of your tweets are in that list, and it's like you can't target, you can't like prune or.
So this thing, like, okay, so somebody has put me in a list of content, and if that feed is interesting, then there are lateral, like, oh, I need to know you because I'm in a list with you, like I'm in a query with you. So like what the composition of those queries and how they're shareable, like starts to build little pockets of knowledge. And then if they're, savable and retrievable and all this other stuff, you can build curriculum around it. You can have highlights. This is where the reactions, there's all kinds of stuff there. So interesting.
Basically, you want to write in a way that other people can find at some point in the future, but also then reply to you like natively and start a conversation back without having to like the current way online is like copy their post URL and craft an email and drop the post URL to there. So like you've completely divorced like where this content was and how you discovered it and where it fit next to the other things that you discovered, and you're like, here's an email or DM. Like, it's like it's better than nothing, but like there's a big difference between just replying to somebody with a link to their thing and within Twitter DMing them the tweet at the same time as your message. So you're kind of like doing like a private quote tweet. And it's just so much more contextual. You're instantly like, okay, like I know what you're responding to and why, and presumably maybe even where you found it.
Yeah, there are other social dynamics, like artistically. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen with film and internet camera with this stuff.
Yeah,
because a lot of what I want to do, what I did on Tumblr, for instance, was like you're just responding in kind through visuals and stuff, and through patterns and that aren't like direct conversations. They're conversation through form. And this has been wildly missing. Like you can try to do it on Instagram, but you're just being bombarded by ads and all this other nonsense. So like the trading of things, the like response in kind, you know, like I made an image like this and you made an image like this, and now we're in a place where people make images like this, and then that can grow. So yeah, it works across medias, I guess, is what's cool. So
yeah.
The querying thing, I'm set up to play around with in the camera stuff too. The main home tab has like a few different swipeable views, which right now are just like your home feed, which is like all the film or photos that you're already a part of. And then it's photos owned and photos posted, which right now for the most part, it's going to be one and the same because there's no native transfer option within the app, but I want to build that soon. Anyways, long story short, at that main home feed, I would love to allow people to set up their own queries that they can swipe through. In a local following graph that way.
So this, did you see that photo.glass or glass.photo, whatever it is, site that popped up? I think it's glass.photo. I got invited to this thing because I know a bunch of the photographers that are around. There are a lot of product designer, like some early Instagram people, I think, in there. And it's a paid photo community. Based on like high res photos, the metadata's in there. It's got some Flickr adjacent things. The app is like pretty slick. Like it's $5 a month, this kind of thing, invite only this. So they've created and there are a lot of crafts people in there, like people for whom are either professional photographers or like expert hobbyists. And like, the skill level on the images is pretty high. And I like to keep track of that, that's a specific worldview, right? Like they're playing with these big cameras, they're creating images, they're going to, there's a travel version of this, like people who are going to crazy places who get shots and whatever. So like, but I don't want to pay them $5 like for this set of, I would pay them $5 to maybe curate this feed or like give me access. I don't know. Like, so there's some version of this, but whatever, I'm putting my photos into an ecosystem at a level of like quality, and then it could be part of some curated view or something like this. And if I could have one place to, it would be great. So yeah. Interesting. Just got to get away.
You would rather pay for like the transparent arrangement of information rather than like a gated fence around information. I guess it just feels so much better because you're like, it separates the concerns and saying that all of the content is made by the people that made the content. All we're doing is just like putting it in a form that like appeals to this type of person.
Right. With film, you're paying to actually own the content, and that's where your money is going, is to cover those costs. With glass, which looks amazing, by the way, but you're paying rent into a service that may, like, you don't know what's going to happen after.
Totally. Yeah. And then you're going to, like, the potential for spending an inordinate amount of time building, like, effectively a portfolio. So,
like, am I dying?
Audio cut out there for a sec.
For a bit. Now it's back.
It was
Back.
Oh, did your iPod die?
Is that working?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've had like Tumblr. I built like this giant audience on there. It effectively shit the bed. I mean, I have like thousands and thousands of pieces that I put on Tumblr and like crafted for the ecosystem and stuff. And like, I'd love to show that work somewhere else, but like curating it and getting it, I mean, it's impossible. It's never going to happen. Like I could write something maybe, and I knew the people who built the thing, and it's impossible. So like,
Yeah.
having like some, where you can, the work that you're putting into like
Yeah.
offering your pieces has the potential for being displayed in many environments, right? You could end up on who knows how many queries in like who knows how many interfaces, and like potentially find an audience that you would have never been able to get to because some curator found it and then can look through some interface. There's just a
Totally.
security in that like is an easy sell. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to open like it really seems to help, like, honestly, two things, which is like the creators, like making creators more discoverable, but it also kind of opens up curators and making anyone a curator if they want to be.
Yeah.
So, and instead of having to build like an entire application that is like maybe funded by VC, which, costs like how much, like, I don't know, like I'd imagine like so many thousands of dollars went into this application so far. It looks fantastic, like Shrew said. And I'm just imagining, like anyone could put, like build an interface, and just like what you're saying is so true, is like it's mostly what they're selling is the curated feed, and they happen to build like nice software on top of it.
Yeah.
So
It's a bundle.
interesting.
It's the publishing tools plus the community plus the like feed and plus the storage. But each of those things could like bring down the others if they they sort of depend on each other. Yeah.
Developer platform, I think, is another big one. Just like the more things that you can plug into without needing to think about like downloading or uploading, it just plugs in.
Yep.
Yeah, you get more novelty in your like ability to work with the media environments, like what the little social games are. And like, some of them can be long-term things where you're like, I want to develop in some craft, right? And I would like a community that is stable, that is like, building in this way with like tooling that can like support the like, like this is one of the things that Twitter and Tumblr were good for. I was able to like go there every day and play with people on writing or like making images or whatever it is within different forms. It was very playful. And it wasn't until it became politicized and became news or whatever it was that it fell apart. But there was no way to fork that community off. Like we had something on Twitter and then we moved over to Tumblr because it was like, greener pastures as far as like the vibe or whatever. But then Yahoo buys them and then you can feel the entire thing change because it needs to be monetized now, right? So like if I could take all of my content and be like, that's fine, do whatever you're going to do. Great. Thanks for doing what you did. I'm going to move over here and start interacting with my content in this way with these people. Like it's portable in that sense. And you don't have to fucking start from scratch every time. Like it is, maybe sometimes you want to do that, but it's brutal. And the older you get, the harder it becomes. So yeah, I don't know. Anyhow.
It feels like the tools just, you're incentivized maybe to build them in a way that just you can't trap users and be like, pay rent. Otherwise, you can't hold people's content hostage. Like you just have to build it in a way that like lets them come and go as they please. So got to provide value otherwise.
Yep. Unless the hostage mechanic is part of the game.
Yeah. It very well can be. I think. But making it very like legible and you just know people know what they're signing up for.
Exactly. Consent-based hostage situations.
Yes.
I consent to be made a hostage. Anyways, should we go through our Figma stuff, or are we gonna wash this one?
No, I think that may be worth.
Yeah, I might need to drop off or at least like put on the phone. I'm like more than happy to listen and like maybe contribute over the phone, but I need to like I'm going to Mammoth for the weekend, so I need to start like packing. I have to get out of here in 45 minutes. So like I think I can do it, but I need to take this a little bit.
I still kind of like the idea of just throwing a bunch of things at the Figma file. Maybe we could start at sync, but then continue at async and kind of at least build a slight topographical map of like maybe projects in one area and like questions in the other, and possible paths forward. Almost like research directions, yeah, which are kind of spawning out of here. I also like, I don't expect us to add maybe content to the Figma file like long term. I feel like the Buzzard library and Notion and the Discord channels are like good places for that. But at the very least, being able to spatially feel like maybe we can, yeah, put them on a map.
I'm game.
All
I'm
right.
game with your guidance.
We do just
Sounds
a quick
good.
break.
Yes, I was gonna recommend that.
Yeah.
Cool,
I'm
cool.
out of it today, so I like can't follow anything, and I feel like I'm like drowning. So I'm like, okay, I just need to reset my brain.
Same thing. Let's do it. All right, back in a few minutes.
How long?
You say 10 minutes?
Sure.
A
That works.
few minutes.
Few
yeah.
minutes.
Okay.
All right. 10 minutes works.
Like bathroom break, snack break, something. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool to see when people pop back up on screen.
That'll
Yeah.
work.
All right.
I know, Orgo, you want to go outside.
Very insistent.
Use your words.
All right. Who wants to what? How are we doing this?
I guess maybe, yeah, one person. I can share my screen, but I also put the link to the frame in, so if anybody else wants to go straight to the file and poke at things themselves, should be able to do that. Put down a couple of pieces of text here, and again, this is just like the way that it kind of feels like it is in my mind right now, but this is in no way definitive or trying to specify any like particular map. But we kind of have honeycombs, and there's like potential features and sort of research questions to go into that way. Feels like that's kind of one of the questions is this content versus authorship, I guess. It's that like what's in a, yeah, I think bugs is another section here. I don't think we should like list every bug in here, but it's like kind of a thing to be mapped elsewhere. But that's absolutely a part of the, it's kind of like features and bugs are also a little bit related. They're sometimes both at once. So I guess like honeycomb is kind of like a pretty primary node here. Then sort of related to that, we have this offshoot question that's like, how are queries and feeds interfacing with each other? The social stuff kind of like cyclically, how do we go back and forth and respond to each other? And again, it's related to this question as well. This what is a block, and are we defining a block fully versus leaving or like separating those into two separate layers somehow? Yeah, that's what I have in my mind. Anybody else have sort of?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand a little meta here. Like, so when you're doing this, like this is helping you orient to like, how do you think about this process? Like this tooling sort of gives you an idea of like holes or like where we're at or where, yeah, like how do you think about this?
Yeah, kind of orientation, ways
Okay.
to go into it in the future. So it's like not to be used as a static map as much as a,
Sure.
Here is kind of the branches, the trunks that I see that are going off into various directions. And like there's usually levels of abstractness. So, something that's in this section right now for us is like very defined. Like the GraphQL plugin on your NPM package is broken, and that just needs to get fixed. But then down here we have like massive questions that we're not even able to like fully formulate into a sentence yet. But is it possible to see what sort of things connect in between them, and like how are they kind of related to each other? And this may be just something that I've like done a few times. I'm not sure if this is like easy to adopt. I mean, like
Sure.
I know Kristen has done similar things, and CJ and I have done a similar thing before, but this is you know, I have no idea how to like what this process is called, because it's not quite mind mapping.
Sure.
Like, mind mapping is usually more like we have a brainstorm, we want to fill it with a bunch of questions. This is like map making at the very,
Yeah,
very
it's
base level.
project topology or something. Like, it makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
And
Like, how
I
you're
mean, this
thinking
is, yeah, like this is also almost a response to Kristen's version of this with the circles and the working
Hmm.
groups within each other, and what's with
Yep.
that. Like, I guess this would be the closest version of me trying to reconcile that and all of our most recent like new discoveries and directions and questions.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to do meta orientation. Like, we've hit a sort of a place where, like, taking stock, I guess, or sort of, you know, plotting where things are is
Mhm.
probably, you know, because we can keep building towards stuff
Yeah.
and like keep adding features to the thing, but like we've got a lot of information coming in, so like scoping it into a map. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to do this like in sketches and stuff. So and I've not really done it in a group as such, other than like sort of whiteboarding, you know, or doing strategy with like a business partner, you know, or with like Kristen, for
Mhm.
instance. So the sort of group mechanism, I just hadn't thought about it. It's cool. So yeah.
Yeah, we could just throw a bunch of things at a shared canvas and see what comes out of it. Yeah, like in as much as I feel like this is the thing to do, but I don't actually know what the thing is. You know, it's just like
Sure.
so yeah. Thanks for playing along.
I mean,
Uh, I'm just looking at my own notes to see if anything needs to move over. This is also, I mean, to continue on the meta thread, this is where I wish I could also just like pull in blocks and
Mhm.
Kristen's note, like, and to have it side by side here, so that now there's a relationship between those two things, and I'm able to say like this set of things is like in response to that thing, but it's also trying to be of that type as well. I'm not like saying like this is a different type,
Yeah.
but still keeping in mind that one is like native to the Apple Notes platform, one is native to Figma, but they're still trying to like describe the same thing.
Yeah, it's different views on similar information. Like Kristen's is a lot like it's more protocol-y, I guess. Like there's some specific stuff to Buzzard, but it's more like here are cycles and like an architecture for moving through things. So yeah, I guess in that sense we're sort of like setting up for the next season a little bit. We're like sort of mapping the territory for like what we would cover. So okay. Yeah, and we're having things like the feeds and reactions and the social layer of stuff is starting to show up because we're starting to get blocks in place. Okay. Yeah. I'm just narrating what I'm seeing. So
thank you. That's
I mean, if that works,
I think
I can
gearing
do
up for
that.
another season definitely makes sense. I like that a lot. Like season round. Like what goes into that and why.
Yeah, I think that it would be cool to start thinking about working in these cycles and like having, I don't know how, because it's the thought of it is it's more emergent than prescribed.
Yeah.
We've been doing this though, like with our sync calls, where at the end of the call, we figure out what we're going to do next. With the burst thing, at the end of the burst, we sort of, it's like directional focused. Yeah, so I think continuing on with that with maybe a little bit more descriptive constraint for what we're doing, because we're just sort of feeling things out up until this point. I think we've got sort of a feel for it. We might be able to fine tune things a bit.
I think this is probably important. Like we just experienced a little bit of this with Beamer. So we just brought him in cold. I mean, he knows Sharu, like you guys have been working together. Like we've talked to him. We have like a general idea of who each other are. Like, you know, we've shared some stories with John and CJ. Like, you know, so he's not a complete stranger or anything like that. But like we've not worked together as a group. And so he doesn't know who we are. It's specifically in that context. And then also what we're working on, right? So like we ended up just sort of talking about generally how things work in the ecosystem and like where he's coming from and like it's a good conversation, but like there's a pretty big gap between that and then sitting and working together.
Yeah, I think that is actually what just happened, is sort of what I envision the working with the garage door open sessions
Yeah.
to be like. Someone
Yeah.
new comes
Yep.
in, you're kind of like doing an orientation, but then we're working a problem.
Yeah, and there's a sort of felt sense leap, like we didn't feel like jumping into like the comps necessarily right away. Like there's because like, oh, there's somebody here who like needs to be introduced to the way we think. So anyways, that's something. So the seasons then like this topology can basically like start to offer like a meta commentary on what you're getting into before you come, right? So like during this season, we're at this kind of stage, we as far as we know, right? And then we're kind of working on social dynamics or whatever in the blocks or something, right? Like maybe that's something, I don't know. It's what it felt like a little.
Yeah. Yeah, to kind of zoom this back to one thing that Kristen mentioned a few days ago, it's like the way of a bunch of people to come together and be like, this is the thing we want to see. Here are ways in which I'm going to try and bring that about. And here are the dependencies that like I need you to do this at the same time as me. I'm going to wait for you to do this thing and then I could proceed. Or there may be like even tighter feedback loops where like the sort of the breaking changes that, you know, like if you had an issue where you're like, I can't proceed. So it's also trying to figure out who is going to be listening to you saying that I'm stuck and what is their like what are they going to do about it? And just like not codifying this into a smart contract, but like also just trying to at least verbalize it. That I think that's all we can do right now. So that over time that can kind of become, I guess, if things are generally like cyclical and there's going to be like these repeating patterns, then I think it will become a little more like holes and roles that you can kind of just like slip into, and you can be like, oh, okay, like I have a bunch of React skills, and there's going to be a bunch of React things that pop up, but I don't know what they're going to be. But like that's how I'm going to make my availability like shown and present.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, I mean, the proposals come back in here. Like, you know, that is one way that like we're surfacing pieces of work that need to be done. You know, so like this comes back to talking a little bit about like, you know, I'm working on the front end, I'm running into stuff, like I'm tossing it into Discord. People who are around who are active in the project can fix that or not fix that, or like move it into a system that where it can be fixed. And like, you know, for now that could be issues and we're, you know, like, but there is a broader sort of like interactive thing where those could, you know, move into some kind of bounty kind of thing or proposal kind of thing or whatever it is. So okay. Yeah, I mean it's it's social architecture here for sure. Like the yeah, how you're moving weird. Yeah. Okay.
This is what I've been trying to set up with camera stuff too, because it's
Yeah.
at the point now where like, you know, other folks can get involved. So I'm trying to speed run like what we've been doing for the past few months.
Yep.
That I'm short on the internet camera side in terms of like these kind of flows. But I think we're somewhat in similar spots in terms of like mechanisms that should be figured out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because you've opened your Discord up to like broader.
A little bit. It's not
Yeah.
like a public link yet, but if you have the test flight, which is about 50 something people,
Got it.
then you can get into the Discord.
Yeah, it's hard because it's like a multifaceted thing that's going on. It's not just
Yep.
like a technical project. It's become like a social project. And then there's the
Mhm.
meta of bringing those things together.
Yep.
So it's hard to kind of like orient to it.
Yeah, there's also many branches, or at least right now there's Internet Camera, there's Cam, which is the app.
Yeah.
And then I'm hoping that there's more branches because people are like
Yep.
wanting to build things and the dev tools are already there. So I'm trying to expand in that way quickly, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
also totally see like a little hardware
Okay.
aspect to it as well, like a box somewhere that just outputs like photos in this specific place,
Oh, yeah.
and it's just tied to
Cool.
so many. So,
Well,
Kristen,
the
you
idea
were
is somebody floated around was like getting one of those virtual or like digital billboards and then selling a roll of film that gives you post access to it.
Perfect. I love
Whoa.
Yeah, just buy real estate in Times Square, and then that gets real expensive real quick. It's nice. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I was thinking about this, like how you could use some of those, like how you could rig up big cameras to use film, like maybe with one of those SD cards that has like Wi-Fi in it or something like that. I don't know what the pipeline would be, because yeah, it would be very nice. I mean, I just don't use my big camera anymore because the pipelining is so annoying now.
I'm definitely thinking about what the UI would look like, where you can just drag and drop like, a big collect, like 100 or a couple hundred images and just have those automatically, where you're not even thinking about film up front, but it's all just part of the one flow of like, all right, you've dragged and dropped 250 images, your price will be this, and then all of them will get minted.
Nice.
But what I like about the protocol stuff is you can rearrange the flows to like, fit the use case. And
Totally, yeah.
So somebody can just like make a ingestion bucket pipeline thing, but they don't necessarily have to change the protocol. They're just building a set of tools that interacts with the protocol. In an opinionated way.
So you mentioned the bounty thing. Sorry if
no, go ahead.
I'm just curious about your thoughts around that, because I'm trying to think through that stuff too, about how does that work mechanically? How do you consider if the work was actually satisfactory to whatever specification there was, or was it just kind of like, somebody's going for the bounty and they were the first to submit? Like there's a lot of different structure types of things.
Yeah, I think it really depends on like the build culture you want. Like, if you do it too mercenary, like it may not have the right vibe for the type of people who are, like sort of altruistically building, I guess. There are probably some types of things to use bounties for. Like, I don't know. Yeah. So I've been thinking about this sort of ambiently, like, how do you open it up? Like, so you can do so I'll just, the slow way where you trickle people in and like build them into or they help build the culture, right? Like, and John, you talked about this, like bringing in somebody new and it changes the entire dynamic of the thing, right? So, like, are you doing that? Like where is the line in which it moves past the squad layer, right? And into like a larger, like, development environment where people are working, like, and I don't know if there's something to point to in like, say, these like bigger, like Django and stuff like this, like how they organize around certain componentry and stuff. I don't know. But yeah, it keeps it like, this comes back to having a reputational game, I think. I can't see a way around it. And then defining your reputational game to elicit the type of collaboration that you're looking for. And you can probably play test this without like tokenizing everything, right? But so like, are bounties a game, right? Like they're just a format rather than like, you were doing this for material reward necessarily. Like you get some sticker or something. I don't know. Like yeah, I guess like the potency of the bounty as a concept. Like, also, are they a format that can be like shown publicly, right? So that you can attract people from the outside to who may not be in community, they can be an on-ramp, like how all those mechanics work. So my answer is I don't have an answer. This is how I'm thinking about it right now, though. Yeah, I don't know. Because
Yeah,
I
the,
mean,
Yeah,
so
the bounties feel like they permeate the boundary of squad, or even if there is a bigger community of swarm eventually where there's multiple squads. Luckily, we just have one squad, because otherwise it'd be a lot to think about. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it'd be easier because you'd have another set of brains that are like, do it like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, there has to be like vehicles to get into the whatever it is. We're calling it a swarm for now, but yeah, so bounties and then the protocol for social architecture, like that, both of those feed in, like they're ways to get in.
yeah, so the less like, so growing the things that need to be done, right, by doing a, you know, some amount of work and then running up against the edge of what you have time or capability or whatever, right? With me, it's it's capability a lot of the time, right? So I'm like, okay, I ran into this thing doesn't seem to be working, I don't know how to debug it, you know, so like offload it into Discord, right? So you have your squad, and then your squad can take care of a lot of this low-hanging fruit stuff. There may be a case when this thing complexifies, which will happen pretty rapidly if we're building at the like pace we are, where there are like things outside of our domain expertise, or you know, and so those can be moved into some like view that the broader like other squads or other people within a swarm can like be like, oh, that we can grab that one, right? Like,
Yep.
And I don't know, it's not necessarily a proposal, it's something else. It's like, this is a thing, here's a friction, and like, you know, a favor almost even, like, and so maybe a favor is a way.
So
Yeah.
this is maybe a little related to when Farzad comes on with
Oh,
a
yeah.
couple people, because there'll be this like separate group that's going
Yeah.
to be working towards the same thing, but we need a way of then coordinating between the two of our like groups of people, sort of like as a shared
Yep.
goal, a direction. And I guess like the as the response, the other side of that is something that they can then keep, that's, you know, not fiat, like not PayPal transfer, but something
Yeah.
that's like that's unique and related to the project.
Yeah, and you can do retroactive like
Sure.
tokenization too. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, that could, I mean, that's like a whole other thing, I guess, within honeycombs, or maybe its own like topology, which is just the like smart contracting tokens, like very
Yeah.
blockchain based tech, which is different
Yeah.
than, feels different than what we have on there right now, in some ways, under honeycombs.
Do you feel like it's different from the current implementation, right? Like the current code that we have. Well, in other words, it's trying to answer like very different questions. I guess
Yeah, I don't know what I'm feeling into. Maybe it's just the nature of it, because it's novel patterning. It's having to learn things in a different, like, or implement things in a different way that we don't know how to yet, which then runs into like it interfaces with social, and like that permeability layer, like, yeah. Cause like within what the group we have now, what you have listed under honeycombs, like we've got a handle on that, but the question now is like, how do you grow it? Which is like an emergent thing, which we're saying it's probably better if we invite more people in.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is trying to codify some of these things into like sort of game dynamics or collaborative dynamics. And then some of the features of those collaborative dynamics are these like primordial, like reputational things. And so what I'm
Yep.
talking about is like moving work through the build system, at least, because that's where my brain is mostly right now. And like, how do you like surface what needs to be done as you're doing it? And then what are the mechanics for working with that stuff as it's surfaced? Some of those things can be contracts, right? In the sense that you are getting something for something, you know, for work done, or, you know, you're getting credit, or you're getting, I mean, a lot of I think the internal system is mostly based on credit. Like, I think that that makes the most sense, and that credit can be exchanged for something down the road, right? So you're accruing credit. So if it is a credit system, you have to trust that the thing is worth doing, right? You're not being rewarded directly, especially
Yeah.
your early people. I think that, but you are being offered credit in some way that has the chance to be bankable, you know, cashable or whatever. But in the short term, it's just ridiculous. That's fine, right? Like, and the more sort of fun it is to get these things in exchange for whatever you're doing in the system, I think the further away from money that it is in feeling, the better. So like,
Yeah.
I think that for some of these longer term projects, so this is back to the mercenary versus not thing. If it is purely mercenary and you are paying bounties out in cash, you are going to get people who care about cash, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's 100% true, but that's my gut feeling on this. If you are offering bounties in something that is like more
Participatory,
socially,
yeah.
whatever that is, right? And like the first thing that comes to mind is a trophy, but we can do more than that, like, you know, some kind of badging or something like this. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, the it's extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. Like, usually financial, monetary stuff is extrinsically motivating, which doesn't necessarily get great results because people don't tend to really care about the thing underneath. They're just going for the prize money, basically. It's not always true, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's how do you have something that is intrinsically, like, we're doing this intrinsically because it's interesting, it's fun. Like, there is some product of doing this that will be fun to see in the world, right? And founder types have that tendency, but like a step outside of the founder type, like where people are not necessarily as accustomed to that level of like dream risk or something, like, how do you invite them in to help build the dream? Like, you know, and in such a way that like part of dreaming the thing is the fun, but there is also like it's some relationship to that potential reward. Like, this is why the retroactive public goods funding is great, right? You know, like, you can trust in the system that it will take care of you in some way. Like, this is what institutional trust, I guess, is, right? But it needs to be enacted. And if there is some token that can be granted to the activity of these things, even if they're, you know, they're being traded like very simply, again, like, I don't know if there's something here, like there's some, I don't know if you need to tokenize this stuff right away, or how you mock up the tokens, or
I don't think you need to tokenize it right away, but I could be wrong. I don't know if there's a right or wrong in any of this, actually.
Both seem like paths. Yeah. Definitely, like, we could probably use emojis for some of it, you know,
Sure.
like before having to write any smart contracts.
How hard is it to tokenize, like, to create a token and like an internal economy, I guess, is the question.
Very easy. The hard part would be figuring out how to, you know, value stuff within that.
Yeah.
The technical aspects trivial.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is where, like, even doing ritualized one-off tokening for like work done, you know, and then you know, or creating a faucet of some sort that creates a type of token that you're manually, you know, whatever that stuff is, and then sort of putting a face on that. And it can be you're just collecting these things, like, to feel what it's like to get one after Like this just adds more structure to the cycles. So at the end of X cycle or at the beginning of new seasons, there is like some distribution of something, right? Or you can mint the, there's something like that, like some mechanic there. You could automate the thing, but I think it's fun to add a social component to it. Like you're coming together and there's, I mean, it's like award day at fucking school or something like that, you know, but that works. Like it's fun, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, there's something there. And if it's technically trivial, then you can, even if it's just a bad JPEG or whatever, at least it's your bad JPEG, right? Like, and it's exactly what Beamer was talking about. Like, put a hat or an emoji on the thing, and then we agree to do this, and then you use it manually. You're taking a JPEG and putting it on Twitter, like, you have now some artifact that could be I don't know, who knows. So yeah, I mean, this also depends on how fun your community is, because the more fun it is and the more playful it is, the more likely these memes and tropes and stuff develop. So yeah, it's just giving social Legos now. Like, you know, yeah, it's just coming up with so back to the okay, so we've got work coming in. Somebody is doing something that produces like some amount of work that the squad can maintain. I don't know if you need inner squad like reputational stuff, because that group of people should be small enough that you're sort of managing that, like, I don't know. So then it's like sort of extra squad for the
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like it's one might at some point have like within squad system for this, but it feels like that happens natively just through like working together, and like the social brain sort of thing takes over there. But it is in some way the same thing that like is happening, that should happen between squads, but like I don't think humans are good at coordinating like through people in that way. So giving some sort of like signaling about what your squad finds valuable and how you want other squads to work with you in bringing those things about. The sort of events, like to me, it's sounding like there's a game that we all come to, and we're like, we sort of do this, but like with multiple squads, and then we're like, here's like the things that we want created, and here are the things that we need. Here's the things that we did create last time. Like it's both backwards looking and forwards looking. The games is like, I've just like every time I think about games, I just see it as like a protocol for social things that people are one sided. The inputs are like people and some sort of intentions and possibly content and code, and then like the output is potentially like more code and content, but also the act of going through that game itself is like unique. There's never going to be that exact like combination of people and tasks and ideas and content. So like a token that's generated through the playing of a game is different from a token that applies to all games ever. Like the unique transition or the unique path through this game has a level of like significance to people that just the game itself does not like encompass. It's a separate one, and it is valuable in its own way, but like a cohort, like we did this thing together, and that may be not like, it may be completely irrelevant to all the people that are not in this squad, but like it's relevant to us, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, so what was coming up there is like the sort of fractal nature of games, like for producing in a sandbox to output a type of work, right? And so at the small end, like what is the minimum proposal that is also game proposal thing, right? That's what the game is, an enacted proposal effectively. Like yeah, a game is like a proposal with an inherent reward, I guess. it can be in that sense. So like what I'm imagining right now is like there are some set of things that are proposed by a group of people that wish to see it, and then a lot of the time in the bigger sense, like the proposal being enacted is its own reward, right? So that's fine. But for smaller scale things or whatever, like that can be true, and you can also get some sort of token for the thing, and that token or tokens or you know whatever it is, some amount of something can also have like a visualization or you know like for this set of work during this set of time, it's got this very particular thing. So you have like an artist like you know come in and make an image or video or whatever the hell it is for that particular proposal. The bigger the proposal, the bigger reward. You know, you contract a bigger artist or you know something like this or a group of artists or something.
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't. That was sort of popping up, and then
There's one step after which I just had like an aha moment. Well, listening to you there, which follows exactly what you're saying, but then the output for each round, and I think this is like a lightweight version of the retroactive public goods funding, is that for each round or each season or each game, if there is an NFT that's the output that there's shared ownership of for the squad that created that NFT could then be auctioned off, which then sets a valuation on the value of what that round or that game added to the overall project, gives someone a souvenir somewhere and a mechanism for funding the project. And then that funds the squad who was involved in bringing that thing to life. And maybe there's some protocol aspect where some percentage goes to a treasury for a DAO or something, but I think connecting that last dot with the NFT thing, I think sets up some interesting mechanisms.
Yeah, the way I feel this is these things get minted, and at the time they're worth nothing other than the fact that you get one of these things and your wallet's filling up with cool stuff, and that's great, right? And then 5 years down the road, it's worth who knows, right? Because it's in the open market, and then there's this other mechanic that is it's worth that much, and then you can burn it for reputation, right? That like enhances. You know, there's something there too. So either way, it's the retroactive reward system. But it's the simple thing that's not worth much in the early days, but it is a token, it's credit for future potential. And if you collect good ones, work on good things, and like the likelihood that these things will be worth something is higher, right? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and if the project keeps succeeding, the valuation of like, you know, having the NFT piece that represents a piece of history in the building or the creation of that thing will theoretically increase in value over time.
Yeah,
exactly. And then you get museums, and then you can donate them to museums, and then you got an NFT museum that you can walk through with your headset. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Well, in the interim, it gives us something that we can publish, so to speak, like, because I do think we need to be sharing stuff with the outside world. Otherwise, how do we, I mean, what we can invite our friends and they can invite themselves, that's fine. But I think broadening the scope of who could enter, we'll be surprised at who shows up.
Yep.
Well, I think that one of these, sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, just that I definitely agree that the focus is going to be some sort of like broad beacon, like we have this, it's not a proposal, it's an invite to play, and yeah, like one might say invite to play. And it sounds like the way we're going is it's going to be baked into a post of blocks that we all like voted on and edited into the form that feels like most like it's going to resonate with the type of person, and in that proposal is going to be the instructions for how to respond and like help bring about the platform, the set of the set of interfaces that lets other people respond to and also create such proposals. Like, so it's I don't know how that gets baked into one post, but the like definitely need this kind of like it's a thing that we created ourselves together that helps other people, that also contains instructions for other groups of people to respond in kind.
Yeah, I think
a hell
that,
of a
so
package.
one of the pieces that could tie into this is that, I mean, so from an event standpoint, like a seedling kind of thing, um, let, I'm holding that last piece that you just said, like something that helps respond in kind. It's an enacted, so this may tie into that, I don't know. What I'm feeling into is that part of the thing that we are encoding with this first post can mint a bunch of coins, like that we can then spend or offer to other people that are like tokens to get into the community, or we can create a game from those tokens that, based on some type of work that is done in the system, grants you the token to get into the broader community to play. That's it. So like the founding post or whatever is like the first minting event of like it's our squad proof of work, and then we can then spend that forward, and there's no monetary value, it is only social value to be able to come play with us, which means that to offer these, we're not giving them away. There should be then a secondary game that you can then earn them or win them or receive them or whatever. And then that, and it could be just like come to an understanding club and participate or whatever, and you get a token. I don't know.
Holy shit! That could be it, right? So, okay, that kind of connects like the side of like the social APIs feel like they're ways for people to come in and talk to us, but they're not really directed as much. Whereas a like a post that has on ramps for people to come into, and a next like not a goalpost, but maybe at least a compass heading, like a place to go towards, and kind of basically saying, come build this thing with us. We want you involved at like whatever depth you want to be, but if you are willing to do it, like basically play at our level, we're going to also give you the sort of like a piece of the thing itself, because that you're going to bring it into existence as well. It kind of makes some good sense there, and that loop feels like it's kind of closing.
Yeah, I think we also don't need to form an entire economy with these things, right? Like we don't
Not at
need like
all.
a token
No.
standard or whatever. It's more like play this silly game and get a silly prize. And then you get the right to work on the thing. that's what the token gives you. It is a token for the possibility to collaborate. And like you have to play collaboration games to to get this token
Maybe,
to get through the door.
So this is where I'm getting like a little tripped up, because I think there's two ways to do that. One is you need this thing to collaborate, and the other one is you collaborate and you get it in return. And I'm not sure how, like they feel like separate things, but they also feel like they're two ways of doing the same thing. But certainly, like I'm just picturing somebody running across this on the internet, and then like, do you want to basically be like, go do the set of things to be able to participate, or just participate right off the bat and then get a set of things?
Well, I think you get to participate in the what is it called? Social events, like learning together, garage door, like those things are totally open at any time. You can earn NFT tokens that then grant you access to maybe the next cycle. And if you think about the cycles in this like full like circle of life, at the end of each cycle, you need to write the smart contract or protocol for the next cycle. And you can go look at the people who've participated, and maybe then you add like their ETH address or whatever, like they're now in for the next one because they participated. There's probably a flow there.
You can tokenize an onboarding flow basically, where you ship a few different types of tokens that represent the stage, and like maybe you have to come to like a garage door session to start off, which then unlocks.
Really simple at first. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like the early seasons on this, like we're just a lot of it's just ad hoc, or like here you go, we made one for you, like like automating all this. But like, so the
eventually we can automate it And I think like
Yeah.
there is potential to do all that. Like it's just a heavy lift because there is a mix
Show
of
up when it
the
wants to, yeah.
social and tech. Because a
I
lot
mean-
of it's human led, which is good, I think. Because otherwise you run into what I've seen in a lot of the blockchain world, it's like super technical, super like dev heavy. So then most
Mhm.
people can't participate. They're just like, I don't know. Like we talked to a friend yesterday. He's pretty bright. He's good at designing and building things in Web 2, and he wants to get involved with Web 3. He just doesn't know how. And he's like, how do I start? Like, how do like, can you please let me know? Yeah, we'll let you know. So giving people like this kind of on-ramp, I think is nice too.
Yep.
Yeah. So what were you gonna say, Shrews?
I forgot. That was great.
Yeah, I really like this idea that somebody could come that's like, I want to code, and somebody else is like, I want to learn. Somebody else is like, I don't want to talk to people. But all of them get put into one like set of interactions that like everybody's able to feel like they're contributing and contribute. Like not just feeling, but also I guess like feel like they're being recognized for their contributions.
Yes.
So it's less like it's kind of like live streaming, like building, but it's also saying you can do more than watch, but you don't have to build. You can do something in
Yeah.
between at the level that you feel is most comfortable and aligned with your availability and skills.
Participate how you want to. And yeah, this is where like what Dave was saying, it's kind of like a trophy a little bit, but we can watch that as we go because that sort of mentality, like you just get a trophy for showing up. You know, we can create more game dynamics in there.
So
Eventually.
I think that the scarcity of showing up early days, a trophy is actually worth something because
Yeah.
it's not easy to get
Oh,
the
people are
trophy.
so into this right now too. Like it's status stuff. This is just basic cultural things. Like you want to be in,
Yeah.
even if it's not like something that's mainstream, you want to be part of something. Like Tyler, he's like, I want to participate, not for any social cred, but because he's interested and he wants to be part of something. I think that's
Yeah.
what we're looking to offer.
Well, early days, the dynamic that I'm thinking into, and that's part of it, is like, so the first round of this thing is like we're expanding the sphere from like 5 people, 6 people to like some larger group. Like we
Yep.
can sort of determine what, like we can feel out into what that larger group size is going to be, right? We know that we would like more collaborators across a larger area. And the thing that's related to how voting and like sort of large anonymous groups where the participation percentage is pretty low, I think that we are trying to shoot for a higher participation percentage, especially in your early groupings, because that
100%.
will express itself outwards, in concentric circles. So like the system or the game or the post that we're trying to produce to announce potential participation like can reward in such a way that it will attract those people. And again, we are offering a token based on some activity or activities, and that token amounts to a worthless thing with a funny picture, right? But you get one of them, and there's not that many of them. And what you have to do to get it is to come play with us, right?
Yeah.
And like, so, but the next round of that thing will probably be, there'll probably be more of them. They'll probably be, somewhat more standardized or different in form and less shitty, but the shitty ones are worth more. So because you get the early experience, and it's only going to attract the type of person that can probably, engage in the way that we're trying. This is down to our sort of game design, I think. That's how I'm thinking about it. Like, so long term, I don't think trophies are a good idea. I'm less interested in the crazy status games or whatever. I think they're fun. I find them interesting, but in a general sense, but I don't know that they are the right kind of thing to build the kind of thing that we're looking to build, but maybe. So, yeah. Okay. I don't know if I railroaded us there.
Oh,
Yeah, summed up things nicely.
so we're kind of feeling into there feels like a natural sort of ending or closing of creating the MVP. Is that sort of what's going on here from like a more zoomed out?
I think that we're orienting towards getting our post done, and it sounds like we're adding in a social like recruitment layer to the nature of the post. Like we are going to publish it out. It's going to be
That's
important,
cool.
and
So-
it can also produce a currency and potential on ramps. So
I'm like vaguely sort of working in this sort of like life cycle of like birth, life, death, rebirth, that sort of thing. And it feels like we're in between or like straddling like a death and rebirth, like we're ending something, but we're not sure how to end it because we've never done this before. And we're also thinking forward to how we end will influence how this thing is reborn. So that I'm just sort of positioning. Because I was thinking about that earlier, like it makes sense to get a post out, and that's part of like that signifies a death in some way, but there's a celebration then of life because it codifies like we did this when we were building the thing, but it then perpetuates what happens next, which this is cool.
No, absolutely. Yeah, like I'm kind of seeing like the published event is like the border, and everything leading up to it is like getting to that point. But in doing it, we also basically like sow the seeds for the next thing. Not in a very deterministic way, but do we like make a plot of fertile soil ready and ask who wants to join in like the next harvest of some sort.
Yes. That pattern, I think, makes sense. Like, this is how life generally works. Like, there's a passing forward of the thing, and it's encoded in such a way. So it's future thinking. So you can like let one thing go, and then the new thing has its like own like next. And then if you just, you could do that forever. You can also encode when like a more permanent death happens. Like if there's tons of things there. Because it's sort of foolish to think that something would go on forever and ever and ever. But for now, it's young, so it will for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I see this one as a seasonal change rather than like an expiration. But there can be a hard like shift. Like, so one of the things that we can do is with the post, like, we can give the 5 of us like the first, trophy thing or whatever it is, like that can be baked into it, or we can do it as a squad that we, like there is some event there, and then that is material that then we can use to prop up the next season or the next cycle or whatever of this thing. Like we can use it as a dynamic, like imbuing it with, because it's representative of the last thing, all of this stuff that we're doing, right? And we were the 5 people doing this generally. Other people were sort of
it's
adjacent,
giving people context to understand how we work and how what we can build with that way.
And then there can be a sacrifice of those things, right? As like a symbol, right? That then produces something else that then we can distribute. Maybe those are the early tokens. Anyways, there's some style of like moving through these things that's ritualized that can imbue them with something. And so that I think is a front end on what you're talking about with death, or so
there's a ritual of rebirth, I think. That makes sense.
Each season can start up.
Spiritual stuff is so strange here.
Belief is kind of the term for samsara, if I'm not wrong. Like sort of
back on the wheel again.
So this is something like Dave and I were talking about this, because that general like cyclical natural cycle sort of thing is Taoist, and the term Tao, like we both assumed was like part of this, but people aren't talking about it like that. So we were like, what? Is this a pattern? Like the double entendre? Like it's weird that no one's picked this up. I'm guessing someone has, but I just haven't seen it yet. Yeah, it's more Eastern ways of thinking though. Like the birth life, I've wrote up the notes that I took on the cycle thing into a post, and it's on Buzzard right now. It needs a little bit of editing, but I want to share that. The birth, life, death, rebirth thing is a Kundalini yoga mantra. So it's just interesting, like this pattern, it's everywhere. Like there's like a felt sense of it for me, which I don't know, it's cool.
Yeah, I think we're combining this like so if you get religious with it, you've got the Eastern sort of models of cyclical nature, and things are returns of the same, and different patterns of this. And then you have the Western model, sort of Christianity style, which is like you toil and then you get your reward at the end. There's a narrative arc, right?
Yeah,
There's a start and
we're
a
playing
finish.
with both. Yeah.
And we are trying to add like reward structures because they work. They're really good. Capitalism does great, right?
Yep.
Like so, but like add that into a cyclical thing where
add a tick
there
rate.
is an award and presence, like being there and participating, but you also get a doodad that can be cashed in on further cycles or something. So yeah, I don't know. That's the sort of philosophical underpinning, I think.
Yeah, so you don't have to end in heaven or hell. That's a great, like, 'cause that whole thing is just like, how finite can we get with this thing? It's like such a stupid, like, yeah, it's a stupid prize or punishment.
Yeah, because it sort of drives it to like a maximum, like a one end of the spectrum or not. It's impossible to stay in your current like dimension because basically the extremes are like more enticing and exciting and get people riled up more.
Or terrifying, yeah.
But at the same time, an extreme I think here is also like the IPO or having your company burn. Like they also are presented as these like dream goal states that everybody like is like fucking dying to get to. Is there like the proposal here is like, can you kind of just like do a little like a farm, just like you have corn show up when it harvests, then you're gonna like harvest the corn and plant the seeds for the next.
Yeah, I mean there is a farming mentality, is that like you get to make food for people. And also the work is like engaging and you're moving, and there's a sort of nice aspect to that. I think that like it also being lucrative in some way is not bad. Like if these
be able to continue it,
yeah, and then part of the game mechanic is that continuation. So like part of, I think, what I'm suggesting, and I think I'm feeling into what we're suggesting, is the idea that when you are rewarded after a cycle or a season or something with some tangibility, something solid, like at least virtually, you can then offer that back to continue the game in some way, right?
Yes.
Like the next game mechanic is not sacrificing, or maybe it's gifting, or like or investing, or whatever it is, in the next round of play in some way. So like there is some social contract or ritual or something that is part of like staking the next like season. And maybe it is, sorry, go ahead.
Bad analogy. I was going to interrupt. Please continue.
No, I mean, like it's basically like, underpinning the next work with like,
yes,
whatever.
That I guess that leads me to think, what is the difference between bringing past like derivative things from past rounds and the people coming in for the first time that round? Oh, in the end, is it that both like there's going to be one type and one is getting converted into the other, or does it just mean that like part of them have more metadata associated with them but otherwise are the same? Or is it really like this super very altruistic, like your unique thing goes into a pool of new things that maybe each of those things has part of your identity, but now like it's in this new like fresh, like completely like primordial loop of stuff. and the specific timelines and identities associated up to that point just all get like totally mixed into a new color of paint.
I think it's a hybrid of that. I think this is one mechanism for doing like progressive decentralization. So like the founders are to continue the next round of play. This is where if you keep the like crazy economics out of it early days, if you are not like immediately offering these things to the public and flushing your system full of capital that screws everybody's brain up, like if instead you are trying to attract people for whom capital is important but not essential, like you know in your first rounds, yeah, like there can be a sacrifice in the next round of some of the earned, you know, whatever, and then maybe that can be exchanged for reputation for future participation in the system. But then there is more currency or tokens or on-ramping potential in the sacrificial, like, you know, materia. So like, and if during that season, like there is a standing mechanic that at the end of every season, some can be devoted to that, and the whole of the swarm decides let's not grow anymore. Like they don't have to sacrifice, like, and there can be a movement in the, you know, so there's some mechanics like that where like you are minting tokens for new potential people in the swarm or participation, and that can be a lot of them or it can be very few of them, you know. But they are moving through the system, and then the act of doing that can like imbue some, you get some reward or something from that, or you could have it be completely blank where you tossed it into the system, no one ever knows. Like that's a type of thing like where it's very valuable.
I think it would be a spectrum, and possibly the exact point on that spectrum is defined for that round or for the project or for that like fork of the project.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we should try to do some seasons, and I mean, this is our, I think, this is a type of recruitment mechanism that I think has some validity. It's like paying it forward in some way, like to attract people. You know, but you don't know who you're specifically going to get. Like the game that you create with the new tokens of like entry tokens or whatever will dictate the type of people that you're going to pull in. So
I think the question is, what do we need to do to finish this season too? Because part of it, like, are we planning to publish something using the software we built? Probably. Is that the goal?
That could be great.
Sure.
Yeah. And how far are we from that? And then it seems like the next step's like a simple tokenized system of reputation. Like this is next cycle or next season. Launching social events and calendar, maybe that's part of this closing out this season. And next season is running the social events that provide tokens and NFTs for participation.
Yeah, I think so. We can rein in on like what the content of the post should kind of be, or we can just try to merge that. I mean, by using the product, or by using the
I
app.
think we should use the app. I think there's some prompting that we can do outside to sort of like corral us, but then anything that comes up through that prompt, use the app. And then if you run into dead ends, using Discord to be like, I don't know how to express this, or I don't like.
Yeah, I mean, the form will be necessarily simplistic because unless we build too much app. So I think that we cap it on that front, like something that can be combined into text blocks and image blocks. Yeah, then yeah, I guess so then we try to figure out what the best thing is to express to like move into the next season. And then we can like sort of I don't know, do some sort of collaborative voting thing by moving that stuff into a post. Maybe there's some system that we can create there to like, you know, agree upon a thing, and then push it out into the world, and then maybe some like minting of individual trophies or whatever to then give out, or whatever, some system like that. But we can talk about that in the process of using the thing, I think. I mean, that sounds fun.
Yeah, I was thinking more just technically, like what do we, like what's left to do? Get that
Okay.
finished and then jump into what you're talking about. Because from the way it sounds is like we're pretty close, but this is like where we kind of started. Like we've got bugs and feature, like what do we want to tackle?
I think the shape of the post kind of informs some of those questions.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know which side to start with.
I think we do know that we want to have text and images, I think.
Yep.
Because I'm guessing
Yep,
there's
yep.
some screenshots and things that will be good to like throw in here.
Yep.
So we're gonna need an extension on the contract or an update on the contract to introduce the post type, because right now it's just blocks.
Yep.
And through that, we need a way of
Actually, I have a question on that piece. Do we need an extension to the contract, or can we just create a pointer to some metadata that has type post?
Oh yeah, you're right. I mean, that's definitely a possibility. I guess what goes into the content field is the question then. Is it, I think we talked once about like, just an array of block IDs, and if the type is a certain type, we just interpret that content differently.
Yeah, because I guess potentially it could just go and load a bunch of block IDs from the graph directly or something. I don't know if we might need to modify the graph, but it could be kind of like almost like a chained query or something like this. I don't know how possible that is, or if it's some extra load that's kind of ugly. Like it might make more sense to put it in the contract, but this could be a very like just base block too that works independently.
I think it makes sense to start with what we have, see if it works.
Yeah. I guess there would be a difference between saying we're going to extend the contract and find a new thing that is a post versus just publishing a bunch of blocks that themselves, and maybe posting somewhat separately like a web 2 portal that arranges the blocks in the way that we want, but like without making definite claims as to the underlying data, keeping that more open. But I see like, yeah, both types or both paths is viable.
So with that also comes like a UI, because we've got the checkboxes, but we're going to need some kind of sorting mechanism.
Yep.
And then a presentational UI for the post. Like, does each block have a byline, or is there an aggregate byline at the top? Just kind of deep questions like that.
Yeah, I have a few comps that we did early days that head in that direction, but we probably need to extend that again. Yeah, getting like the ability to sort of publish and look at everything and see whatever like will give me an idea how to collapse this stuff into the because right now it's really redundant and like sort of bloated. Yeah, so seeing the content together and how it wants to sit next to each other will help me understand a little of that. And then yeah, so our presentational layer, where we want the post to go out into the world and all that stuff. Like, I guess we have like minimum requirements, like it's in mobile and, all these kinds of things, because I've been sort of half-assing that part. Yeah, I may need some help on getting that really tidied up, but yeah, sounds like Beamer's down, so. Yeah, so we're back to the figuring out the like sort of build a post interface. Like whatever mechanic, checkboxes for now, drops them in the post, getting that thing hooked up and just having them on a canvas, I think is a good like small win. Yeah, and then dragging and dropping them shouldn't be too difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So the way I'm seeing this is we're trying to get to a point where we can all hit publish together we more or less have an idea about how to get all the content in order and to look like more or less to see what it's going to look like, and like have some sort of preview mode, maybe if we even need that. We have an idea about what hitting publish is going to do data wise, and it's either going to like take all of the block IDs and arrange them in a way that's like unwrappable from the outside, or like make some modifications to the schema beforehand to allow the publish event to do that to the blocks. And the mobile presentation layer kind of also feels like the question of how will people actually read this with a URL, agnostic to the type of device that they're using. Like PDF was an artifact that we mentioned once, but also just I'm imagining a very, very transparent Web 2 frame that's just literally making that the graph query, and maybe it's part of honeycombs.buzzer.life. Maybe it's like something separate that's more like generalizable to other posts in the future. And the actual like NFT that's created during the process of minting this new post type, that is the thing that we're going to say in some way in the future is going to be like something will happen to that in the next round. We don't really know what yet, but we're gonna have to like kind of in some way do something with it. And we're maybe going to talk about how we're going to do that in the post itself and invite people to come watch like the next round and maybe put some dates in there that people can like align to.
Yeah, I see this thing as so the few like, where can you find us? What are we up to? How can I look at some technical stuff? Like, here's some other views to show that like this thing works like this, right? Like, here's the mobile version, here's the PDF version, here's the strict data, here's the blockchain version, whatever.
Yep.
Then that initial NFT, I don't know if it exists like an essay version of an NFT, and then and then there's something we do with that, like you're saying, I don't know. And then there is some other byproduct of all of us agreeing to hit publish that produces the post and some other thing that gives us material to work with the next round. And those could be, an initial minting of tokens, or, like a recruitment tokens or entry tokens that all have like a look and feel to them. And then this other post is just like a welcome, hello world kind of like, I don't know what you do with that. I haven't thought anything on that. So, but yeah, I think it's showing it's a piece of hypermedia, right? Like this is just one instantiation. It's on a URL, or it's also here, and it's here. Yeah.
Yep. And at this point, I think like hypermedia might be too limiting of a description, because hypermedia doesn't generally like have instructions on how to create more of itself. It's like also encoding the ingredients.
Auto poetic hypermedia.
Yeah.
A hollow media.
Hollow media?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like a hologram. An interactive hologram.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hologram that can clone itself.
Exactly.
Okay. This is yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, it makes sense then. This is the sort of prompt field that we have to write into. Like we are trying to design a post that like perpetuates what we're trying to perpetuate. So like, and we're going to use these blocks to design that post, and then having some system of like deciding what ends up in the final post. I think that we can potentially contain this with a deadline or something like this, the end of a season or something, which sort of, I don't know if that's a necessary component on this. You were talking about something that made me think about that, or we just continue to feel our way into it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if a hard date that's like, the classic like 12 a.m. on this date and everything. But like a rough we could almost maybe extrapolate out to where we feel like that is just more as a soft like target.
Sure.
And then we can work backwards to feel like what's part of this week and what's part of next week. To me, that's feeling like more than a few weeks and less than a few months away, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
That's a better exercise. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, over and over again, we're doing the thing that's directional and like explorative.
Mhm.
I don't, instead of
Explorational.
like, yeah, it's very specific and like,
Yeah.
firm. Because we don't know what we're doing. Like, if we knew what we were doing, then we could probably get this done by this date. Yeah. But
Yeah. This is where, like, I also I wonder if using a board like this, maybe like this is kind of what Kanban tries to get at, but it's like it usually becomes like a really really strict pipeline process.
Yeah.
But kind of a way to say these are the very next things, and they'll take like roughly this much time, and then these are things that are further away and roughly how much they'll take. Also, there's like parallels to that KSI Industries like video game like interface, but not like that obviously, but they were trying to communicate something very similar, which is what in what order do things need to happen, and roughly how long are the different things going to take, and which of those like can happen parallel versus like synchronously. And so
there's all
like
these.
putting the stuff into a text document like generally is hard. So
I think like if we stick with the process of what do we want to do next time for now, I don't know, do we need to go further out?
I guess maybe the thing that I like want is just maybe one level of separation, which is like things that we want to do next and things that we want to do later.
Sure.
We really don't have to assign any like extra details to that, but just so that.
Or what if it's things we want to do next that's in service of this larger thing that's down the road? So I don't know if that helps. Yeah.
Well, even better, would be a connection between the two. Yeah. And so okay, like to be specific, I think it'd be really nice to be able to in Discord say, I'm working on this thing now, and while working on it, I've discovered that there may need to be an extra piece, and the reason that this piece is relevant is because it gets us to this other thing that's further away, and just being able to reference both somehow, like without using pure language, which can get like really fuzzy and messy. But not also using like Jira or linear, where like everything is an atom that has one ID associated with it. And like we just need like a softer version of that. But I think maybe the thing that can come out of right now is pretty much a list of messages in Discord, and
starting to use
emojis
the
stuck to them.
Building channel as a work diary, I think is how you called it. Maybe that's sort of what we're committing to, and then seeing how that works, and if we can sort of tighten that up, that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, there's also there. I mean, I can see a kind of visualization that's like related to the work cycles, where like here's what we're working on, and then like here's what we could potentially work on next. Or you had it as next and later. And like the later thing is usually like, at the end of the work cycle, we decide what to do next, right? So so you have some rolling, I don't know what the visualization, I mean, you could have just two buckets of stuff and like you're tossing things in that bucket, but you need to prune it before you can move on to the next thing.
And maybe like some things are not moved from the later bucket. It's more like they're like split, and you take a piece of it that like still exists in the big bucket, but it also exists in the small bucket now, or the current bucket. But yeah, buckets kind of like temporal buckets or gets at it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to read one of these things or communicate one of them. Like I have
Yeah.
like the fuzziest image of like two blobs.
Yeah.
And then there's something in these blobs that's higher dimensional because it's related to closer to the present. And then like down the timeline, it's a line of time. There's some gradation to the
Yeah.
next blob, which is less filled out and is being shuffled as
Yep.
the progression along that timeline to the next.
Yeah.
I don't know, but how
It's
do you
like more
visualize all that?
lineage stuff, like relational stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So yeah, I mean, I see how Trello is working towards that, but if you turn it into these little chunky chunks,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
and then the tendency to pipeline it, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the concept of growth in these things. Like if they are, planted as seeds in later or whatever, and then they can grow in some way that brings them to the fore or whatever, and that requires some work on them. And I don't know, like there's some like participation in keeping these things lively. I don't know if this ties into proposals and the other stuff that we were talking about. Like these things have like a tangibility to them. They're workable in some way. But I don't know if that gets too formalized or whatever, like, or too hard to manipulate.
Well, I think the goal would be to make it very easy to manipulate. Like, but while keeping to that coordination structure.
Yeah.
Presumably at some point soon. Okay.
Yeah, there's another relational thing there that makes these things like you get them on the page and then they have context within it, like yeah. I'm feeling into it. I don't get it yet. Okay. So now what?
Yeah. What do we do? How do we stop talking?
Yes.
I mean, so the next thing that like, do we need to do more of organizational stuff, or like, do we pick some more stuff to work on next, or where both?
Yes. So I have more or less every issue that we raised, like during the conversation, written out on paper. But I think also, Kristen, you wrote most of it out into Discord as well.
Early on,
Yeah, that's where the very, very practical like work nuggets are. And
it's weird that it shows my name each line. It doesn't do that for me on my end.
Oh, interesting.
I wonder if it's because I wrote it, like it just shows KP and then if I have
There may also be a time component to it, like if you wrote them back to back versus left to component. I don't know. Yeah, they're all it's strange. But yeah,
setting that you can do like compact view, which I think is what
that makes sense.
Yep. So okay, I also see that you
F was feature, like it felt
That's a cute little worm bug. Okay. So we have a lot of stuff here that's pretty broken out. And then we have larger questions that aren't really like things that one person can just take and do. That's kind of more like the discussions. So I think I don't even know how much to formalize those. I don't think they really need to be formalized. But it would be good to get a list of these work chunks at least in one place, so that when we start working on each one, we can like basically say I'm beginning on this thing, or I got blocked by something while doing this thing. And since that's going to be in the building channel, then and some of them are already here, then I think that maybe independently, like shortly right after this, like sometime today, see if your work chunk has already been referenced, or like rewrite it, and just put your like emoji letter on it, and then over the next week when you pick it up, just like reply to it and say, you know, you're beginning to work on it, and then like any updates are just replies to the reply, and so it's always like connected. Or I think if it's back to back, even there's no need to reply. It's just more like if a couple days have passed and a bunch of messages are in between, but you still want to point to the thing that's way above, then but maybe that shouldn't even be a hard requirement, because it's kind of annoying to find Discord messages. So you really, I think like just saying I'm going to fix the like history time thing.
Yeah.
Do it, and then say it's like on the branch or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so how does that tie? I mean, we talked about like the commits coming in somewhere and then using those to like as a discussion method.
That's right. Yeah. That's a potential Discord GitHub integration that would just post a message to building every time that there's a new commit. Or yeah, I think a new commit makes sense. That could be a work task for this week too. Right,
okay. So for this, we're marking down work that needs to be done and then sort of self-assigning. And then just we're committing to doing that in Discord effectively so that people can scan it and know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, and so that we're not both also trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, and then so okay.
So one of these will be just to Discord.
Is it possible to get these all in one place? Because I'm gonna go crazy trying to like find these messages as well. Like I just know like in advance, like a screenshot or something would just like really help. Otherwise, like there's so much to scroll through that it's just
no, totally. Yeah, that's what I'm trying. That's what I'm trying to be like. Like, how do they live in Discord while still being able to be findable? One feature that we have in Discord is pinning.
What if you and I, John, like go through the notes and like compare notes and move all of this into one long post in building, and then people can sort of like reply to that and be like, I'm taking this one.
Yep. Yeah, I like that. So current squawk is just like the current scratch pad of everything.
Stream
and
of thought.
We're going to move it into building. And do you have thoughts on like keeping it as one message versus breaking it out, but having them all in the same section? And
that works too.
I guess also like each one can just be pinned, because I think right now we have I've been pinning the PR like
Bye, CJ.
Bigger.
Yeah.
I've been linking the
Bye, this
PR
is
and
awesome.
like
Sorry, I was mostly just listening, but I there's like too much going on.
All good.
Later.
Or like now I'm like I have to drive. My sister's calling.
Yeah.
Just get crazy.
Yeah.
Be safe.
Don't crash your car.
Peace.
Bye.
So maybe pinned could just be kind of our like working set of things that as they get done, then they get unpinned, and so there's always like more or less of a small list of the next chunks of work that can be taken, which Kristen and I are going to add into building. And when you start them, you just reply to that message as you're working on it, and then when you finish it, you unpin it. Does that kind of sound like a flow?
Cool. Yeah.
Because I do agree with CJ that like if you have to go like searching through days of history of messages, like it's going to be impossible.
Yeah, using these things like blocks too is not a bad idea, because we can eventually use the blocks to build something like this that works a lot better. Where you're just like, you're moving blocks into some query, and then you look at the query of the stuff that's happening in current burst, and then as blocks come in and out of that thing, you know what needs to be worked on, and that makes sense.
Like this, and we could just add to it in building. Right?
And so all the Discord messages are starting to exactly. Yeah. And this would be and like this. So that's not that. So You can jump to this original message, click reply, and saying, I'm starting to work on this, blah, blah, blah. Here's what happened. Did I finish it? And then when it's done, then you unpin it.
Can you do threads now too?
Yeah, the threads are really nice.
Yeah.
Yes, but there are some restrictions if I remember. You can only keep them for a set amount of time. Infinite is not one of the options.
Why?
Knowing that it tells you that it's pinning it, like why does that have to be another message?
Yeah,
It should just have a little
agree.
pin
It's a
next
little
to
noisy.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
what is the logic there? Is it like they're just keeping it clean, or they can just charge for it, or
I don't know. A
There's
lot
enough-
of people were complaining about this. Like, it's odd. It's definitely odd because then it bifurcates your stream of knowledge into things that are ephemeral and things that are not. But like, what's what?
who knows? Only people who can pay can
Keep it for
Think-
longer, but
think
not
in
infinitely.
threads. No. Oh, what the hell? That doesn't make any
Yeah, so that's why I'm feeling like maybe until we're really sure about what should be kept around and what shouldn't, we keep it at the main level so that it's sort of preserved. But I definitely want that functionality. I just like wish it worked differently to what it does.
Yeah, it's weird.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so the pinning thing works, and then can we each unpin something that somebody like is pinning up for grabs?
Yeah. As far as I can tell, because Kristen pinned these things, right? So
And you can draw. Okay.
I think
Yep,
CJ gave
unpin message.
everybody
Admin rights.
so
Okay,
we can
cool.
do whatever.
Cool.
We can't edit each other's stuff though, right?
don't think so.
No. Yeah, just not like it.
Delete it.
Close enough.
Yeah. Yeah, this feels like it'll yeah, the idea of like defining something in a conversation, then taking it out, but not like actually divorcing it from this place and
Yeah,
having
it's
everything be a
origination
stream. Like
place. Yep.
this is they like definitely we're sort of prototyping what like working with blocks should feel like in the future. But yeah, like if something doesn't work, then just explain your set of internal emotions and feelings in the building channel, and we will know how to read it.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, all right. So we have the set of work that'll be pinned. You can go through and I mean, I guess in some cases some of that stuff it'll pop up things that need to be responded to or whatever. Then we can respond in kind, and if anything comes up during that burst session, I guess, just dump something else in there free form, and we can figure out if that needs to be formalized into some other pinning or something like that. I guess
Yeah, I think,
Okay.
can you do at channel, like if you wanted to jam with someone, like at channel, like is anyone down to, for the
that'd
pair
be
programming
perfect.
thing? Yep.
Cool.
It's really weird hacking systems.
Yeah.
The only thing to do with them. Nobody ever builds it just right.
No.
Cool.
Okay. I guess once CJ is online, we can figure out the time to meet next week.
Yep.
I think we just continue burst 2 because I like it's only visual changes right now, so just to add on more to that. And sometime next week we will conclude burst 2 and presumably have a few more bursts, and then we will have a post.
That's the idea. Then everybody's going to get a trophy. Gotta design a trophy. Gotta figure out our trophy design.
What's our sense to kind of tee CJ up for scheduling of timing next week?
Sounds like there may
Maybe
be like sync
later
sessions
week.
that happen throughout the week, so probably just next Friday as a
Okay.
rough goalpost.
Cool beans.
Yeah,
I think we did good thinking today.
I think so. It was it was a little rough and a little hard at times. I'm just like,
Yeah, that's the good stuff.
Holding on to
Everybody's yeah, like
my
I don't
gear.
know. We're
Yes.
covering a bunch of weird ground, and yeah, I don't know. Sharuz, you're pushing forward on all your stuff, so it's yanking us along. So it's cool.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
it.
I mean, if there's ways to kind of stack test some of this stuff too, right? So that we're learning as much as possible, or good to coordinate.
That would be wonderful.
I continue to be down for everything.
Cool.
Nice.
When is by the way, like if next Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon, if there's a preference, I'm trying to finally get this first technical session.
Oh,
And,
that's what I was about to ask you.
Yeah.
When is that your next thing? I don't know. Kristen, do we know?
We're open.
Either way.
I almost like lumped John into that because we'll be living together and I'm just like, I don't see anything on the calendar. We're all open, but not that I have access to his calendar.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say, afternoon or evening on that?
Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon.
Afternoon. Yeah, my only block on that is 2 Pacific on Tuesday for an hour. Otherwise,
Okay.
totally free.
Cool.
And
Basically just trying to schedule it around all of you and CJ and
Yeah.
Gamer.
Yeah, and I could probably just, I have a few recurring meetings and stuff per week. I could probably put them on the buzzard as like John offline or whatever.
On block, yeah.
Yep. And whoever else could do that as well.
What's the Rome Research Club? It just caught my eye.
It's I don't know how active it is still because there's like 7 of these, but like kind of a weekly cadence for reading text together and keeping a big shared Rome research graph in sync with
That's
each other.
cool.
Yeah, but there's a few of these, and they all have like members who don't like the other one.
Weird.
Yeah.
I mean, knowledge management. It's real.
Yeah, it does.
It's real
There does seem to be
idiosyncratic.
a pipeline though of people leaving Rome, going to Obsidian, and then potentially going into what's the app that Reflect? Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's popping up. Yeah.
Yep.
Haven't played with it.
They're getting more and more user friendly. We're gonna meet them up, and then you can come on over, build your exact interface on our thing. Yeah. It already works. All you got to do is put buttons on it. Easy.
And then mint an NFT out of it. Good.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Cool. I'm gonna go snack on something because we earned it.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Thanks. Definitely.
Yeah. Cool.
It's been fun.
Till next time.
All right.
Yep.
Later.
Fridays.
Bye.
Bye.